Chapter 844. Melissa was startled. What do you mean by other place? Hurry up, young lads, all of you better be alert. Why is there such a huge difference? Melissa muttered. Zhong Li Bai's mind was roused. Red Soil City without the protection of an army was like a delicious meal to the monster army. The three of them were stunned by Tang Tian's powerful words, and the entire laboratory became quiet. But when they started to run, no one would have such a thought. Mo Ling did not waste his time either. His foundation was different from Sai Lei, and his research direction was different as well. After a while, the madness in their eyes gradually subsided, and they calmed down. Sai Lei, Mo Ling, and Screw discussed and argued about the Honorable Marshal's roar for the entire night. Melissa was speechless. From what we can see, the Honorable Marshal's roar's hull itself has the corresponding circuits, although some of the circuits do not have high energy efficiency and are rather old-fashioned, but it has an advantage: it can withstand an astonishing amount of energy, so we might as well increase the energy flow, since star rocks in the Sacred Saint Galaxy are not worth much. And we can use star treasures, and use it as the frame of a stronghold. What Screw brought was not only the data of the Honorable Marshal's roar, but also a large amount of information on the materials in the Sacred Saint Galaxy. Zhong Li Bai swept through the Daylight Army and swept clean Daylight City. His gains far exceeded anyone's imagination. But Screw was indifferent towards the riches. From the start, he had placed all of his attention into testing and researching on the various materials. That's too crazy, Melissa exclaimed. Because of the Mo family, he researched more on how to dig out the potential of ordinary materials, and how to optimize the mechanical mechanisms to increase their performance while lowering their cost. He concluded many mature theories, and the Mo family's mechanical spirit weapons became more and more famous in the past few years. The Mo family's mechanical spirit weapons were never the best, but were at a relatively outstanding level. But the Mo family's mechanical spirit weapons were always the best to use, the fastest to master, and the most cost-effective mechanical spirit weapons. I don't know. Johnson shook his head. That's all I know. Only the higher-ups know, and there is a saying that Temple already knows of that place, and wants to conquer it. Not from the southern region? Melissa's eyes widened, her face filled with shock. She only regained her senses after a moment. She spoke softly with an indescribable shock in her voice. Could it be the Gold Continent? As for whether or not the Southern Alliance would win, she had never considered it. Melissa suddenly thought about what Temple had said, and revealed a look of shock. Don't tell me that when Temple said that the Southern expedition was aimed at the Southern Alliance, was that true? We don't have many rare materials right now. Most of the main body of the ship needs to be made from ordinary materials. I suggest using an embedded structure as the main body. This can greatly increase its strength, and then use loose building blocks to wrap the outer layer. In this way, if it is attacked, its loose structure can absorb a considerable amount of energy, and its main body will not be damaged. It's probably a kind of tradition, Johnson said uncertainly. They have the tradition of walking in the sea of energy. I think they want to use this method to train the soldiers' willpower. Temple's reason for the Southern expedition was that the Southern Alliance had offended the Honorable Marshal Continent's benefits, but this was scoffed at by many people. Even the citizens of the Honorable Marshal Continent thought that Temple's goal in the Southern expedition was to swallow the Southern region. If we were to say that the monster army's long-distance assault was already extremely tiring, then walking in the sea of energy was not just a problem of tiredness, but danger. The energy corrosion that was everywhere, and the hidden energy vortices that could appear at any time, even warships could not guarantee their safety. Sai Lei was a research maniac. When she first obtained the information of the Sacred Saint Galaxy's warships, she brought the mechanical laboratory to conduct an in-depth research. Her original intention was for the Southern Alliance to win in the future, and to have the ability to obtain sufficient materials. She could directly produce warships in the Ursa Major constellation. In Heaven's Road, warships were definitely killing machines. With their terrifying offensive and defensive capabilities, it would make battles extremely simple. They galloped like thunder, wild, ferocious, crude, unstoppable, causing people to not hesitate. Anything that dared to appear in front of them would definitely be trampled to pieces. The Southern region is the Southern region. The Southern Alliance is the Southern Alliance. Johnson shook his head. You can see them. Do they look like people who are addicted to enjoyment? No. Johnson spoke softly and pointed to the sky. There is a saying going around, saying that they might have come from somewhere else. With that said, the monsters below suddenly increased their speed, as though they were fighting with their lives on the line. This spark is a little too much. It's good that you know, don't speak nonsense, Johnson said softly. The three of them quickly started to discuss again, but this time they did not argue with each other, and everyone's tone was calm and fast. His first-hand information was extremely precious. Run properly, this is what we do for training. Unless you guys still want to sit in the Null Division's warships in the future, otherwise, all of you better run properly. Melissa could not help but ask, aren't they afraid of dying? Melissa was startled. Training in the Sea of Energy? Didn't they say that the people of the Southern region are addicted to enjoyment and are extravagant? Melissa asked suspiciously. Macefield Tradings was ultimately a large-scale trading organization, and in the past, they had many business partners in the Southern region. It was only because of the outbreak of war that all of these businesses were interrupted. The three mechanical Grandmaster engineers that were proficient in different fields clashed together, and the sparks of inspiration were unimaginable. He suddenly thought about the rumors regarding the Southern Alliance, and one of them mentioned that the Southern Alliance armies loved to train in the Sea of Energy, which was why the other powerhouses were unable to comprehend it. Warships aren't that scary, right? Melissa was dumbstruck. Sai Lei looked at Tang Tian in surprise. At the moment, Tang Tian's face did not have the usual smile. His eyes were extremely gloomy. His entire body was releasing a powerful aura. His unquestionable tone made it hard for anyone to refute him. Tang Tian had no choice but to interrupt the three of them who were in a frenzy, and spoke with a rare stern tone. Hey, pay attention to the time, everyone. We don't have much time. You guys need to come up with a plan immediately. The longer you drag it out, the more disadvantageous it will be for us. Today, you guys need to come up with a plan, adding the time for repairs. Our time is extremely tight. The other armies of the Honorable Marshall Continent are most likely on their way. We don't have time. I don't need a perfect plan, I just need a feasible plan. Luckily for them, due to Tang Tian's return, Pai Pa had long predicted that there would be a huge movement. Thus, she had invited Grandmaster Mo Lung to Three Spirits City in advance, just in case. Initially, Grandmaster Mo Lung was not willing to put down his research, but under Pai Pa's emotional and logical persuasion, he still came to Three Spirits City. That's right, Tang Tian is right. If it was in the past, Johnson would definitely not divulge this information to anyone. Macefield Tradings had hired him, but that was all. But at the moment, everyone was on the same boat, and it was a boat that could not be abandoned. Just as Three Spirits City was discussing fervently, Zhong Li Bai's monster army was traveling day and night, advancing towards Red Soil City. She quickly regained her composure. Yes, we need to seize the time. Leading the way was Melissa and Johnson. They sat on a transport boat and looked down at the group of monsters that were running frantically. To prevent their identities from being exposed, the transport ship was an old ship that could barely be used, and the two of them had disguised their appearances and voices. The Macefield Tradings that was hidden in the shadows was beneficial to Tang Tian's plan. Johnson also felt that it was inconceivable. He had seen many armies, but knew what kind of soldiers were like. All the ordinary armies relied on transport ships to set off, while some of the elite armies would occasionally train in this aspect. With the gathering of the three Grandmasters, Tang Tian was filled with confidence. Three Spirit City. Indeed, from what they had seen and heard in the past few days, they were definitely not people who indulged in enjoyment. They were dressed in plain clothes, and even Master Tang Tian did not seem to be outstanding. Compared to them, the aristocratic disciples of the Honorable Martial Continent were much more luxurious. The mechanical army below, even the mechanical puppets were extremely ugly. There were burrs everywhere, without any paint. They looked like trash that was scooped out from a rubbish dump. Tang Tian brought Screw back to Three Spirit City, and got Sai Lei and Mo Lung to stop all their work, and face the Honorable Marshal's roar. Zhong Li Bai's boorish roar could be heard from afar. Johnson looked down at the bronze flood that was running at full speed. He hesitated for a moment, then said softly, "They might not be from the southern region." This was what Tang Tian admired the most about Pai Pa. She always completed her tasks silently. Considering the Honorable Marshal's roar's future battle environment, being surrounded is the norm. We first need to strengthen its defenses. The strongest part of the Honorable Marshal's roar is its main body. We need to use it as much as possible, and the defense of the warship should revolve around it. Then we need to create some structures to guide the flow, and form a barrier around the surface of the warship. Like that, other than the energy barrier, the Honorable Marshal's roar also has an internal barrier, with 2 layers of protection. Its ability to survive will be very strong. She was in a daze. So it turns out that the crazy young man who often went crazy has already grown into an outstanding leader. When Sai Lei and Mo Lung saw the report, the two of them were so excited that they almost jumped up. Even Mo Lung, who was a cold person, was extremely excited. Sai Lei immediately grabbed his hair. He wished that he could enter the sacred Saint Galaxy immediately. Everyone were now comrades, and that was why Johnson dared to speak of such a terrifying rumor. But, seeing the 3 of them arguing with each other, their faces flushed red. Even Tang Tian, who was used to life and death, felt a chill down his spine. "Yes." Johnson nodded his head. "And it is from a very far distance. There were people who once saw a mysterious army appearing at the Honorable Martial Continent's Sea of Energy, and many people guessed that it might be an army from the Southern Alliance." The 3 of them spoke one after another, their speed extremely fast, a series of terms that Tang Tian did not understand, and only felt that they were powerful. The outline of Red Soil City appeared in the horizon. Johnson waved his hand. "A terrifying tradition! Who knew?" Chapter 845. Melissa was startled. She looked at the mountains of warehouses, and could not help but say, "We can't move them all in 10 hours. Melissa thought that Zhong Li Bai was being humble, and laughed. In the end, it was a victory. Their minds went blank. Rumble, rumble. Johnson was moved. When the Honorable Martial Southern Expedition had just begun, the entire Honorable Martial Continent was extremely optimistic, and the army was pumped up. In the initial phase of the war, it was truly so, be it the Southern region or the Southern Alliance, they all crumbled upon contact. But as the war progressed, although the Southern region organized their resistance, they were not much of a threat, and the newly formed Southern Alliance unexpectedly stabilized the situation, displaying astonishing tenacity. But Red Soil City surrendered. The yellow sand that was stirred up fluttered, and one after another sinister bronze figures could be faintly seen. The Southern Alliance was truly extraordinary. Johnson's expression was similarly sluggish, his face pale white. Beneath the crude and tyrannical appearance, he was extremely shrewd. Zhong Li Bai shook his head. "There's nothing to congratulate me about." From Johnson's experience, none of the military generals that he had seen could do such a thing. After half a minute, the 2 of them regained their senses from the shock. The scene that had unfolded had completely surpassed their imagination. Despair and ash covered all of their faces. They had thought that the Gold Continent might come to Red Soil City, but they never expected it to be so fast. A fierce glint flashed past Zhong Li Bai's eyes. Melissa and Johnson, who were on the transport ship, were completely stunned. Their expressions were the same, their mouths were wide open, their expressions frozen, their minds in a blank. In the next moment, screams of panic came out at the same time. The current monster army's scale and fighting strength were more or less understood by the enemy. It was deathly silent, deathly pale. The wind blew the sand away. This battle, no, there was no battle, had completely toppled his impression of Zhongli Bai. Previously, he did not have a good impression of Zhongli Bai. He was crude and impulsive, tyrannical, with a trace of neurosis, causing people to be uneasy, as they felt that he would do something out of line. Compared to him, the other military general, Nie Chio, had an extraordinary bearing. Regardless of the situation, he would always be calm and collected. The rumbling sounds from the ground awoke the slumbering citizens of Red Soil City. They all put on their clothes and flew into the sky. The monster battalion moved forward in an orderly manner, and they stirred up a cloud of dust that covered the sky. Every step of the heavy monsters was incomparably heavy. When more than 10,000 monsters landed on the ground at the same time, the earth trembled and the mountains shook. Even though they were very far away, every step he took was like a heavy drum beating in the hearts of the crowd. Leave no one alive. Zhongli Bai's tone was cold without a trace of warmth. The corpses will be hung at the highest point in Red Soil City. Whoever dares to disobey my orders must be prepared to die. But personally witnessing it, even Melissa could not complain about Red Soil City's lack of willpower. But after a moment, he muttered to himself, psychological warfare. Zhongli Bai did not care about bloodshed. He only felt that it was too inefficient. Upon seeing Zhongli Bai, Melissa greeted, "Congratulations, General." That was the reason why Zhongli Bai did not go and rob the citizens, and not because of some old and inflexible rule. Robbing the people's belongings was the property that they had painstakingly accumulated. There would definitely be many people who would risk their lives for it. Jason knew how wrong he was. When the deep bronze torrent stepped on the light of dawn and appeared at the end of the horizon, the entire Red Soil City became dead silent. Seeing the bustling scene, he was extremely satisfied. Snatching the boats, snatching the craftsmen, snatching the materials. No one could maintain the willpower to resist in the face of such might. As a spectating comrade, Melissa herself was so shocked that her mind went blank. She could imagine how shocked the people in the sky above Red Soil City would be. He could tolerate his soldiers being bandits in the past, and could tolerate them being bandits now, as long as it was his orders. Johnson's face was filled with even more respect. General Zhong's strictness in managing the army was truly unimaginable. It was something that no one could have imagined, if not for personally witnessing it. In the past, Johnson did not think too much about it, but now that he was up close, he knew how powerful they were. They were the Gold Continent Bandits, the infamous Gold Continent Bandits that were like the sun in the sky. All of the willpower to resist, before it could even ignite, was swept away by the torrent. All of the hot blood that had not even cooled down was completely smashed into pieces. The Gold Continent Bandits are here. One after another, figures soared into the sky, and in the blink of the eye, the sky was filled with densely packed people, all of their faces filled with panic. Johnson immediately pulled Melissa back. He knew that once Zhongli Bai made a decision, he would not change it. Zhongli Bai waved his hand and said coldly, "No buts, this is an order. The enemy is definitely gathering their army and preparing to wipe us out. The army needs time to gather." Zhongli Bai suddenly felt that what he was doing was no different from bandits, but he continued to urge his soldiers to increase their efficiency. When Melissa saw the corpses hanging high up, her face turned pale. She had never seen such a cold general, to be so cruel to his own men. Is he not afraid that his subordinates will rebel? Whoosh! Regardless of how one looked at it, he was not a good general who loved his soldiers as though they were his children. He knew himself well, and was proud of it. They were not fast, but like a moving bronze forest, they slowly approached Red Soil City. Suddenly, Zhongli Bai's wild roar exploded out like thunder in the dead silent sky. The dense killing intent that seemed to be leaking out caused everyone to feel as though they had entered a deep winter. They were unruffled and unruffled, their heavy footsteps converged into a torrent, like a heavy hammer. Hammer after hammer smashed onto the hearts of the people in the sky above Red Soil City. All of the willpower and determination to resist, under the hammer after hammer, started to crack and spread, until they crumbled. Zhong Bai suddenly said. Every family in Red Soil City had their doors tightly shut, all of them hid behind their doors and trembled in fear. In the western region, when bandits broke into a city, killing and plundering was the norm, even massacring the entire city was not strange. Are we surrendering or not? He had once been in an army, and could naturally tell that Zhong Bai was using psychological warfare. But, to be able to use psychological warfare to such an extent, Zhong Bai's standard was definitely not low. They were in the Whitefields continent, the western region where bandits wreaked havoc, and any city's guards were not weak-willed people. The trading organizations in the city, with some wealth, would have hundreds of guards, all of them brave and skilled in battle. For a top-grade trading organization like the Western Traders, it was not strange for them to have more than 1,000 guards. Adding in the large and small mining groups, mercenary armies, the number of fighting men in Red Soil City far exceeded the monster army. The two of them were extremely familiar with Red Soil City, and with their guidance, they quickly found the inner treasury of Red Soil City, which included the large warehouses of the Western Traders. Zhong Bai and the rest had arrived too quickly, and did not have the time to move the resources away. This period of time is my chance. They knew that Red Soil City's guards were weak. They had never thought that Red Soil City would be able to defend against the monster army, but they had never thought that the monster army would actually be able to take down Red Soil City without shedding any blood. Zhong Bai's face darkened. The 10 soldiers beside him were captured by his personal guards, all of them were crying and begging. Truly a terrifying military general. With that, he turned and left, leaving behind Melissa and Johnson, one in shock, the other in admiration. The bronze torrent brought along the flying yellow sand, and suddenly stopped outside Red Soil City. Before they could react, an overwhelming killing intent surged out from the sky, causing the sky to change color, as though Red Soil City was about to be crushed into pieces in the next moment. All of the sinister monsters below the city walls stomped their feet at the same time, as though the ground had been struck fiercely, causing the dust on the city walls to fly up. Time seemed to have stopped at that moment. All of the guards and citizens who witnessed the scene all held their breaths, as though an invisible hand was strangling their throats, causing them to suffocate. Red Soil City surrendered. But, Melissa said anxiously, they were a group of true monsters. They were ferocious, brave, crazy, and when they formed an army with steel-like discipline, they would only bring despair and death. Zhong Bai brought his personal guards and patrolled the streets with killing intent. Every single one of them had their own uniqueness, and the master actually had so many talents under him, causing Johnson's heart to burn with passion, and he looked forward to the future. Move faster, we will retreat in 10 hours. You call this victory? Zhong Bai did not care. His face was filled with disdain and contempt. A group of trash, how can they be my opponents? All of you move faster, don't waste time. As for the soldiers that were killed, it was not because they robbed the citizens, but because they disobeyed his orders. If we can't move them all, then we don't need them, Zhong Bai said resolutely. Are you going to surrender or not? Zhong Bai ignored the two of them. His eyes were fixated on the map, and he counted the time in his mind. He had an outstanding view of the big picture, and knew that before the Null Division formed their fighting strength, he had to shoulder the heavy responsibility of attracting the enemy's attention. One after another, the sinister monsters finally appeared in front of everyone. Red Soil City was in an uproar. Countless of people scurried around the city like headless flies, and those who were quick to react had already grabbed their bags and escaped through another city gate. The soldiers did not meet with any resistance. regardless of whether it was the government's treasury or the trading organization's warehouse, to the guards, since they did not belong to them. Why would they risk their lives for them? 10,000 people roared in unison, over 10,000 sound waves converged into a heart-trembling torrent, and with a buzzing sound, they slowly dissipated into the air. As for the future, they have to survive under my hands first. Gold Continent bandits. Zhong Libai, who came from the academy, was brimming with the aura of a bandit, but his strict adherence to discipline was instinctive. He only had one rule, and that was to obey his orders. He knew what kind of people his subordinates were. They were a group of true bandits, and the habits that they had developed over 10 years could not be easily changed. Chapter 846. He turned around and looked at the forest of bronze monsters around him, and a heroic spirit rose in his chest. It really made one's blood boil. More importantly, it was quite possible. Without knowing of his existence, the Honorable Martial Continent would never be able to guess their true intentions. Tang Tian didn't expect the situation to be so bad. "What are your plans on your side?" Screw wanted to come himself. Bing was quiet for a moment, then said, "That's good too, regardless of life or death. The battlefield will forever be our home. Help me take care of him." "Don't worry. There won't be any problems." Bing was confident in Screw. "Remember our base? In the past, Screw was in charge of all these huge projects, and at that time, he was the #1 foreman of our army. Everything he built is still usable even after tens of thousands of years. Not being able to defend is a good thing? Uncle, is your brain fried?" Tang Tian frowned. Tang Tian clenched his fists tightly. Victory! Zhong Libai watched from afar. The Null Division fleet was in charge of escorting them. The powerhouses in the White Fields continent had been swept clean by him, and they did not need to worry about being robbed. Seeing that the Null Division fleet was flying steadily, he could not help but reveal a rare smile. "Can you defend your side?" Tang Tian asked worriedly. But after a few days, he was surprised to find that Screw's commands were orderly and rather experienced. The White Fields continent's warship graveyard had already become a bustling construction site. The majestic Honorable Marshal's Roar's hull was packed with people. The craftsmen working on it looked like densely packed ants. The new battleship map immediately proved that Frank's worries were not unfounded. The shape of the new battleship on the blueprint was extremely strange. It looked like it was made of a pile of foam, and he was even worried that it would fall off. Bing laughed and did not mind. Such a sad fellow. No, it was still in its infancy. There was still a long way to go before it could become a true mighty force. In comparison, the bandits and mountain thieves under him were just a motley crew. Quite powerful, Tang Tian muttered. He had to admit Bing's concept was outstanding. It seemed like these guys hadn't wasted any time recently. Frank's gaze stopped on Screw for a moment, feeling a little strange. According to his original plan, if he couldn't find a master shipbuilder, he would find a high-level shipbuilder to make up for it. He did not expect that the master would actually hand this project over to Screw, and he finally understood Screw's occupation, mechanical grandmaster. "Oh, I forgot. With your intelligence, it's impossible for you to understand the mysteries here." Bing whistled again. "In the past, we defended the Shang continent because it was the path to Heaven's road, and our path of retreat. But now, where is the key to our victory? Congratulations, young man. You will become the key to victory in this entire battlefield." The huge fleet was like a black flock of birds, flying into the distance. When they occupy the Shang continent, the first thing they need to do is to defend it. I will leave a ruin for him, and then continue to harass and attack him. Goqing Wendao was proficient in offense and not in defense, and was surrounded by enemies on all sides. To defend the Shang continent, the other two armies would definitely set up defenses around the Shang continent. The main focus of our attack is their supply line. As long as we cut off their supply lines, they will be under a lot of pressure. They were the soldiers that any general yearned for. I have confidence in Screw. Tang Tian swore, then added, anyways, I don't have any other choice. The empty space around Honorable Marshal's roar was filled with all sorts of materials, all of them were of different colors and emitted different light auras. These were the spoils of war that the monster army obtained in Daylight City. Tang Tian imitated Bing's whistle. It can't be, the only remaining famous general of the Southern Cross Army was actually beaten to the point that he did not even have the strength to retaliate, and now he doesn't even have the confidence to defend. If Tang Cho knew that the person he was trying so hard to catch up to was only at such a standard, he would definitely cry. Since you have become the key to victory, that means that we need to achieve two goals. One is time, but what time do we have to fight for? The time you need to move. And the other goal is to delay their reinforcements, which also means, before you reach the heart of the Honorable Marshal continent, we need to delay them. Giving up the Shang continent is our goal. Bing replied, we must win. The road ahead was filled with thorns and dangers, but he treated it as a joy. The excitement of struggling between life and death made him addicted. To be in the enemy's hinterland, to destroy without restraint, to be like a wolf in the midst of the enemy's encirclement, that was the battle he wanted, that was the life he wanted. His tone changed and became serious. Go Ching Wendao has already gone crazy. Do you know how many of his subordinates have died recently? More than 60,000, but he did not even frown. The Honorable Marshal Continent's reinforcements are already on the way, with over 200,000 men. 200,000 cannon fodder, adding a madman who does not care about his life. The defensive line is already at its limit. Bing's tone was extremely calm. Bing was as calm as ice, without a trace of emotion. Tang Tian was completely captivated by his battle plan. The monster army started to move. Move out. Bing whistled, and Tang Tian could imagine Bing puffing out smoke and being pleased with himself. But no matter how much he thought about it, how could a mechanical grandmaster engineer be proficient in such a huge project? Upon thinking about the battle plan, the fighting intent in his body was ignited. Like raging flames, it surged through his body. The low and powerful command was like the growl of an alpha wolf. Relax, relax, I am not stupid enough to let him go to the front lines. Tang Tian said happily. He is building a warship, an ultimate army warship. Have you heard of the Honorable Marshal's roar? The Honorable Marshal Continent's first-generation ultimate army warship is only left with the hull, and we plan to make use of it. Without a Grandmaster shipbuilder, we can only let Screw make do. Bing's words stopped and became extremely serious. You must grasp the time. Every second that you have now is exchanged with the lives of others. But currently, he was no longer envious of Niechio. The Null Division was still a powerful army, but his monster army was not inferior in any way. Watching a motley crew slowly transform into a valiant and ferocious army in his hands, the sense of accomplishment made him addicted. Bing was unmoved. At the moment, he was releasing a powerful aura, and said, for the sake of tricking the enemy, we will not give up so quickly. On the contrary, I have already ordered Little Crane to defend the line to the death, and even sent a large number of reinforcements. Not only that, we will retreat step by step, and try our best to buy time for you. Your task is not light. After fighting with the three fellows from the Honorable Marshal Continent, I realized that they are truly powerful. Although the Honorable Marshal Continent only has Jiaya left, he is definitely not easy to deal with. You must definitely not give him time to react. Jiaya is good at defending. Once he decides to defend to the death, you will not be able to quickly end the battle, and the situation will become extremely disadvantageous to us. And young lad, are mechanical grandmasters so powerful? Bing did not linger on the question, and asked. Zhong Libai should have made his move. His plan is not bad, it is just that he himself is in more danger. But he is rather crazy, and is suitable for such dirty and tiring work. Speaking of which, we have to thank the Leo constellation for sending us two great generals. Bing suddenly chuckled. They will definitely consider this problem. For example, they will definitely bring a lot of supplies this time. The Shang continent is far from the Honorable Marshall continent, and to ensure a long supply line, their strength will be greatly dispersed. And to ensure the safety of the supply line, they will transfer armies from the Honorable Marshall continent over. Like that, the Honorable Marshall continent will become even more empty, and it will be easier for you to succeed. And we just need to concentrate our strength and cut off their supply line. The supply line is not our true goal. Our true goal is to delay their steps of reinforcements and create an opportunity for you to deal the fatal blow. What kind of strange ship is that? He was dumbstruck. After the victory or defeat is decided by you, our battle plans will revolve around you, and defending the Shang continent is no longer necessary. That is the entrance to the Blue Sea, and they will not be able to find it in a short period of time. Furthermore, we have Barbara and the rest of the awakened armies, and have the absolute advantage in the Blue Sea. Even if we are unable to stop the army, it is not a problem to interfere with their scouting. That also means, in a short period of time, even if Go Qing Wendao takes over the Shang continent, he will not be able to go to Heaven's Road. To be able to obtain the title of Grandmaster in any field, everyone would respect him, and mechanical Grandmaster engineers were no exception. But for a mechanical Grandmaster engineer to become a shipbuilder, forget about Franks, he had never even heard of such a thing. It was not only in terms of technology but also in terms of engineering. How big were mechanical puppets, and one or even a few people were enough. But no matter how small a warship was, it required a team to work together to complete it, and for an ultimate army warship like the Honorable Marshall's Roar, it required 10 or even 100 teams to work together to be able to complete it, and that was a harsh requirement for the shipbuilder. I know that. Tang Tian did not understand it. In the past, he was extremely envious of Niechio who led the Null Division. The quality of the Null Division members were too good, they had powerful individual strength, steel-like willpower and discipline, absolute obedience. Han Bingning and the rest were all outstanding individuals who could take charge. Tang Tian's entire body trembled, his killing intent became denser, the light in his eyes blossomed, his expression became serious, without the usual playfulness. He nodded his head and said, "I will. All right, as long as I can fly, it is fine." He could only comfort himself. Franks was extremely suspicious. He was in charge of arranging the materials, and his understanding of the project was definitely not limited to the surface. Ignoring the standard of the warship's construction, Screw's ability to arrange was definitely someone who had handled large projects before. Bing thought for a moment, then said, "It's dangerous." Bing laughed happily. "Don't you think that it is a good thing for us?" When Tang Tian and Screw brought back a pile of blueprints, he was still feeling apprehensive. It was not that he did not trust Tang Tian, but he knew how difficult it was to build an ultimate army warship like the Honorable Marshall's Roar. Although they did not need to consider the most difficult part of the warship, but even the construction of the other parts were not easy. Zhong Libai was filled with confidence. Tang Tian was currently communicating with Bing. Chapter 847. For example, warship weapons, to Sai Lei, they had a terrifyingly low efficiency of energy. But because the Sacred Saint Galaxy did not lack energy, it was so abundant that it made people jealous, and thus did not need to consider this problem. Lance shook his head. "I am not worried, I am just curious. When we capture these bandits, I will ask them, how did they manage to escape from the Gold Continent to here? Could there be a star door that leads to the Gold Continent? That is a huge matter." The current Aodeng had long been forgotten by people, and it was hard for people to remember that the young Aodeng, regardless of strength or prestige, was not inferior to the current Lance. But a pity, an injury had completely destroyed the outstanding military general. Even the backing of the Western traders, Go Qing Wendao, would definitely not offend Lance, who had such a bright future, and would instead try to rope him in. But regardless of how one looked at it, the technology used in the new warship was something that the ordinary craftsmen were unable to understand. From the start, they had never planned to repair the Honorable Marshal's roar, but planned to build a new warship. A new warship required time, and not a short amount of time. Our trading organization is currently being robbed by bandits. Clan Elder Jonathan and his loyal and devoted Ao Deng have been brutally killed by the bandit. The Ratchet Army and the Daylight Army have all suffered fatal blows, and the Red Soil City has been robbed clean. What are the local government thinking? Oh my God! Such powerful bandits have appeared in the western region, and no one actually knows about it. If the bandits are not quickly eliminated, and our losses are not recouped, then our western traders will be doubtful of your capabilities. In our own territory we are actually unable to ensure our safety and wealth. Sai Lei had researched on the Sacred Saint Galaxy's warships for a long time, and naturally knew where the Sacred Saint Galaxy's warships were strong. The strongest aspects of the Sacred Saint Galaxy's warships were their materials and hull designs. The Honorable Marshal's roar's keel was made from the most outstanding materials, and its toughness was something that could not be found in Heaven's Road. The craftsmen worked extremely hard, but every day, when they rested, they would laugh at the amateurs of the bandits, and that became their only pastime. What did you discover? Norman asked curiously. Lance was surprised. I heard that only the Whitefields continent suffered damage. Furthermore, your trading organization has elite guards, and with the Blood Fox holding down the fort, aren't the bandits easy to deal with? The 12 lieutenant generals were not ordinary people, and all of them were equally outstanding. If there was a vacancy in the 5 Tiger generals, a new Tiger general would be chosen from the 12 lieutenant generals. The young Lance was seen as one of the candidates with the highest possibility of becoming one of the 5 great generals. The fleet that had been plundered from Red Soil City had arrived, greatly increasing the efficiency of the repairs. When the craftsmen saw the completely changed Honorable Marshal's roar, they were completely stunned. They were all secretly waiting to see the joke. The bandits had probably heard about the Honorable Marshal's roar from somewhere, and had the wishful thinking to repair the legendary warship. The director of shipbuilding kept a close eye on them. Their daily workload was very heavy, and no one dared to slack off. The other party was a murderous bandit, and they did not want to die here. Hence, when Screw arranged for them to work, none of them resisted and obediently followed Screw's instructions. When they started working, they were even more convinced that the bandits were messing around. Master Elderweiss's encampment is too far away from Whitefield's continent. Distant water cannot quench nearby thirst. The representative of the Western traders knew that it was impossible not to bleed. He clenched his teeth and said, 20 silver-grade warships. As long as Master is willing to send out troops, I am willing to donate 20 silver-grade warships to your army. General Lance. Lance, who was seated below, propped up his chin, beneath his dazzling golden hair. He had a sleepy expression. Norman laughed. This will allow them to send the Scorching Sun warships even faster. What nonsense is this? Screw remained unmoved. But if we offend them, it will not do us any good. Norman said softly. The Western traders are going to be ruthless this time. Who knows if we will receive the order to move? Trash display ships? Tang Tian brought the God Armor army and quietly left. Just at that moment, a soldier suddenly rushed in and handed over a report. They are a bunch of lunatics. His gaze met with a pair of unreadable eyes, and the arrogant representative of the Western traders froze. He suddenly remembered that Lance was not an ordinary military general. Why not? Lance shrugged his shoulders. A strong dragon cannot suppress a snake in its turf. The Western traders have been operating in the Western region for so many years, and have deep roots. If we truly fall out with them, I reckon we will have to change locations. We haven't been here for long. If we change locations, we will lose face. I just want to tell them that we are not so easily swayed. I don't know, I just have this feeling. Lance muttered. Their actions are completely unlike bandits, as though they have a goal in mind. Honorable Marshals roar. Oh my God, they actually want to repair the Honorable Marshals roar. They were extremely clear on how weak the current Honorable Marshal continent was. Lance glanced at them. The Gold Continent bandits have left the White Fields continent and have found traces of them in the auspicious Wood continent. The Honorable Marshal's roars repairs continued day and night. The representative of the Western traders scolded Lance in his heart and clenched his teeth. Deal, Lance said. I need the Scorching Sun warship. Norman nodded his head, his face gloomy. The loose structure was on the verge of collapse, causing people to be wary of it falling down. How can they not add more beams? What kind of arrangement is this? It goes against the classic structure, it is full of mistakes. Oh my God, is this a battle position? Do these bandits have any intelligence? Could it be that by piling up the warship weapons, they can increase their might? As expected of bandits, many people started to despise them. But they did not have the heart to remind them. Not only that, they were determined to completely comply with the other party's request. Other than the Honorable Marshal's roar, the other arrangements of the new warship were completely different. The Honorable Marshal continent's highest-ranking generals were the 5 great generals, and below them were the 12 lieutenant generals, who formed the backbone of the Honorable Marshal continent. The Honorable Marshal continent's vast territory was because of the 12 lieutenant generals overseeing it, which was why it was peaceful. In truth, the craftsmen were not as united. Some of them could not help but run to Screw, and tried to make him understand how many laughable mistakes he had made. The West Sea continent was an important continent in the Honorable Marshal continent's western region, where roughly 25% of the metal trades were conducted, and the West Sea's metal ore exchange was one of the 4 most important trading markets in the western region, which made the West Sea continent the most flourishing continent. To die in the hands of bandits, to the military generals who once shook the battlefield, it was undoubtedly a humiliation. But the current West Sea continent's conference hall was extremely tense. I heard that your side found General Oliver for a different price, Lance said slowly. Just now, when you mentioned the Scorching Sun warship, his face turned black. Norman laughed. He was extremely excited. 30 Scorching Sun warships was definitely a huge deal. Overall, the Sacred Saint Galaxy's design was the same as the Sacred Saint Galaxy's martial techniques. It was big and simple. The Western trader's representative who had lost his cool previously immediately spoke up. Master, this subordinate is angry that the bandits are too arrogant. The entire western region is currently in a state of panic, and the trade routes have been cut off. Master, the millions and millions of citizens in the western region are waiting for Master to take action and wipe out the damned Gold Continent bandit. When they regained their senses from the shock, the strange Honorable Marshal's roar in front of them made them not know whether to laugh or cry. They had never seen such a terrible-looking warship. That's right, it was terrible-looking. The Western trader's representative did not expect Lance to be so well informed, but as long as the other party named a price, it would be easy to handle, he said without hesitation. 30 silver-grade warships. It's the same price for General Oliver. Norman, who was beside him, reminded him softly, That's not good. An intense voice interrupted Lance's reminiscence. He raised his head and faced the Western trader's representative and asked indifferently, What's the matter? The Honorable Marshal's roar in front of them looked as though the hull of the ship was filled with all sorts of trash. To Sai Lei, who was used to meticulousness, the crude designs were something she could never tolerate, and Mo Lung had simplified her meticulous designs, and did his best to shorten the construction period. Even so, it still caused many of the craftsmen to complain. Lance shook his head. The Gold Continent bandits are not simple. Lance's face revealed a smile. Where was the indifference from before? As for the other designs, Sai Lei did not care about them. He sighed. It is a pity for Ao Deng, his standard is not bad. The silver-grade warships were of different standards, and their prices differed greatly. The Scorching Sun warship was a high-grade product among the silver-grade warships, with astonishing fighting strength, but its price was also astonishing. Every single one of them cost more than 200 million honorable Marshal coins. No wonder the Western traders' representatives' face turned black. Most of them belonged to various organizations, and were filled with worry along the way, worried about their own fate, and worried that the bandits would force them to build warship. Once the bandits were destroyed, they would be dealt with as well. Lance was quiet for a moment, then said indifferently, "That's right." Seeing the honorable marshals roar in front of them, they relaxed. The Western traders had an extremely powerful army, the Blood Fox Army. From the selection of soldiers, the army had extremely high standards, and their equipment were of the finest quality, much more luxurious than Lance's army. The Blood Fox Army's training standards were extremely strict, and it was said that they had received special guidance from Goqing Wendao. Nicknamed Blood Fox, the General Elvis was cunning like a fox, and had extraordinary strength. If a passage to the Gold Continent appeared in the Honorable Marshal Continent's hinterland, then to the Honorable Marshal Continent, it would undoubtedly be the worst thing that could happen. For an outsider to build such a big ship, it is truly a mistake. Lance opened his eyes in a daze. What's not good about it? I can guess what he is going to say next. I am not a bodyguard of the Western traders. Furthermore, the Western traders are well trained and well equipped, with their equipment and treatment. Our army is not even fit to carry their shoes. Although they had to pay a huge price, but it was a good result, and the representatives left satisfied. Purpose? Norman started to ponder. Could it be that they want to do something big? But you don't have to worry too much, we will add Oliver, that is double insurance. Norman watched as they left and heaved a sigh of relief. I thought you wouldn't agree, that's good, that's good. Chapter 848. That's a good idea. Jizai was the first to support. It was the 6th time he had suddenly changed direction. Then we can do this, Tang Tian said decisively. We will first sneak attack the Western traders and focus on their warehouse. After that, we will set up an ambush, and the Western traders will definitely ask for reinforcements from the local armies. That way we can give them a fierce blow. But, as they please. The Gold Continent bandits wanted to take the chance to escape. The densely packed bronze monsters welcomed their arrival, as though they were silently laughing at them. The 5 of them scolded. The torrential rain obstructed their vision, which meant that the difficulty of tailing them had greatly increased. The monster army advanced forward on the ground. He had specially chosen a vast wilderness without any cities. That way, even if they encountered enemies, they would have sufficient space to turn around. Furthermore, after considering the final outcome, he would be able to gain more time for the rear. He felt that he had to do something. To sit here and wait for the honorable marshal's roar to be repaired, and watch as time flowed? To watch as their lives flowed? Since Tang Tian could not do it, he had to do something. Zhong Libai waited patiently, although he knew that the longer it dragged, the more dangerous his situation would be, but he was like a lone wolf in the winter, persevering and waiting for an opportunity. They flew very high and never flew low, and only followed from afar, causing Zhong Libai to be helpless. The monster army was a typical land-based mechanical spirit weapon, although it had the ability to fly, but regardless of height or speed, it was not satisfactory. On the contrary, the opponent's speed was extremely fast, and they were extremely cautious, flying extremely high. With the monster army's pitiful flying ability, they were unable to handle them. Zhong Libai's smile became wider and wider, his eyes revealing a beastly killing intent. Extremely strong, Johnson said without hesitation. Master Lance is the youngest lieutenant general. His talent is astonishing, and is hailed as the most likely candidate to become a great general. But it is a pity that his background is not good, and thus he did not have the opportunity. If not, Master Lance would not have been transferred to the Western region. That sounds powerful. Tang Tian scratched his chin and became excited. We came to the right place. If not, the monster army will be in trouble. We need to create some commotion and attract Lance's attention. A few days later, Jizai, Fu Jingji and the rest were stunned. When Johnson heard those words, he almost spat out blood. He clutched his chest and died. He once had a military career, and was an officer, and had outstanding strength. If not, he would not have been hired by Macefield Trading to be a guard. Brother Fu and I will go find out the location of the Western Traders' warehouse. Johnson volunteered, while Fu Jingji stood up. Tang Tian was extremely pleased with himself for grabbing Johnson as a guide. It had to be said that Johnson played an irreplaceable role in this operation. For example, he suggested that they disguise themselves as small caravans to not attract attention. Johnson, who had worked in the Macefield Tradings for many years, had a deep understanding of the various tradings, and he had constantly changed the symbol of the tradings. To Tang Trader to say Tang, Tang Tian Li He. Tang Tang, Tian He. The monster army was, and they to say, Li to say to army the beta monster long they say they Li to say one Tang. They want they. The rumbling sounds of the monster army were drowned out by the torrential rain. They were like a stream that quietly entered the gorge. Along the way, Tang Tian and the rest, under Johnson's guidance, learned how to restrain their killing intent, and disguise themselves as a merchant group. They swaggered into Blue Wind City, and did not attract anyone's attention. Inside the courtyard, everyone was either meditating to recover their strength, or wiping their weapons, waiting for the night to come. Only those important targets, upon success, would cause a commotion, and attract the attention of the entire western region. Ji Zai's bewitching blade was too eye-catching. Upon making a move, it would be easily seen by others. Once the monster army was exposed, they would be surrounded, since they were in the honorable Marshall Continent's hinterland. When Uncle Bing told him to speed up the progress, all the time was exchanged with life. This sentence touched him greatly. I have bad news. Facing the generals in front of him, and Johnson, who had a look of worship and respect, Tang Tian's face was calm, and he spoke with the demeanor of a great general. If they were not careful, and lost track of the Gold Continent bandits, then they might not be able to find them again, as the terrain was too complicated. Tang Tian had been bitterly thinking about it for the past few days. Very good, Johnson said. The Western traders have deep roots in the Western region, and after operating for so many years, they have close relationships with all the armies in the Western region, other than Master Lance. Master Lance had just been transferred to the Western region, but I never expected that the Western traders would be able to rope him in so quickly. Johnson knew that everyone was not familiar with the honorable Marshall Continent, and said, "The Western traders are truly willing to pay a huge price this time. The 2 lieutenant generals have been invited by them. Lieutenant General Oliver is not surprised. He has a close relationship with the Western traders, but I never thought that General Lance would also be moved. After fighting so many battles, he was no longer the young man who did not know anything in the past. The 5 of them were extremely fast. They quickly drew 5 trajectories in the air, and flew into the gorge like 5 sharp arrows. He even advised Tang Tian to give up on the unimportant targets, to prevent himself from being exposed. Zhong Li Bai bit his lips, his face sunk. He was born as a military general, and was extremely clear of the fact that they were a lone army deep in the hinterlands. Once they were targeted by the enemy, what would await them? There was a possibility that the honorable Marshall Continent's armies were already mobilized. It was as if he could see a large net in front of the group waiting for him. Seeing the few flies in the sky descending in panic, Zhong Li Bai laughed silently. There was a gorge ahead. Zhong Li Bai needs protection. That was what the young man Tang Tian thought. Go ahead. Whoosh. Merchant groups like theirs could be seen everywhere. Upon rushing into the gorge, the 5 of their eyes constricted. The wind blocked the curtain of rain, causing the sky around them to darken. The Western traders must have a good relationship with the local security army, right? Tang Tian asked. The Western region's vast space and weak defense, to their small but powerful bandits, it was the most suitable battlefield. After racking his brains for so many days, he could not think of any clever ideas, but he thought of a simple and effective one. The sky was filled with dark clouds, crackling sounds could be heard, as thick lightning bolts formed a lightning net that rolled through the thick clouds. Every time that happened, a heart-palpitating aura would envelop the entire land. The sacred Saint Galaxy's energy concentration was much higher than Heaven's Road, and the might of the lightning was much stronger. Johnson, who had just finished gathering information and returned to the courtyard, had a bad expression. He continued, "Lieutenant General Oliver and Lance have issued a joint order, requesting for the various continents in the Western region to be on high alert, and for unknown people to be investigated strictly. They also requested for the various garrisoned armies to be on high alert. As long as they discover the whereabouts of the Gold Continent bandits, they do not need to fight, but they need to keep an eye on them at all times." Zhong Libai did not tell Tang Tian about it, and Bing did not tell Tang Tian either, as it was something that Tang Tian had figured out himself. The Western region was not the flourishing area of the Honorable Marshall Continent, and there were no enemies around, thus the Honorable Marshall Continent did not have many troops stationed there. Out of the 12 lieutenant generals, only 2 were stationed at the Western region. "Is this lance very strong?" Fu Jingji asked curiously. "An inescapable net. It was not fancy, it was simple and effective, and the enemy would never expect them to be so daring." Set off, the gorge was called Bill's Great Gorge. It was majestic and precipitous, extending for over 1,000 li, with many branches that were connected to each other. Everyone's faces changed. The monster army had over 10,000 men, and it was extremely difficult to conceal their track. Now that the entire Western region had been mobilized by the 2 lieutenant generals, the situation immediately became grim. "Let's go to the Western traders." Johnson thought for a moment. "Blue Wind City's Western traders are rather large. If we suddenly attack, the possibility of success is very high." Tang Tian's powerful performance previously made Johnson admire Tang Tian from the bottom of his heart. When he heard that Tang Tian needed someone familiar with the Western region as a guide, Johnson agreed without hesitation. Especially when he saw Tang Tian pondering for the past few days, he became even more excited. His vision was completely white, and he could not even see his own fingers. Fu Jingji, Johnson and the rest all nodded their heads. Johnson was filled with anticipation. He did not forget his own duty. The few black dots in the distant sky were like flies, making him feel uncomfortable. He finally realized the weakness of the monsters, which was that they lacked the corresponding methods to deal with the enemies in the sky. Such an irresponsible plan, oh, that's not right, it definitely cannot be called a plan. Johnson swore on his military career that it was definitely not a plan. On the 2 sides of the cliffs, over 100 monsters suddenly soared into the sky, like cannonballs being fired. The rain poured down. To deal with them, I need to rely on other conditions. Damn thunderstorm! Zhong Libai squinted his eyes. He had been racking his brains for the past few days to think of a way to deal with the stalkers. Zhong Libai had met with trouble. Johnson and Fu Jingji quietly left, while the rest sat down to recuperate. They were currently staying in a large rented courtyard. This large courtyard was specially rented for trading groups to use, and could accommodate a small-scale trading group, with tall walls and 4 simple and crude buildings that could be used as sentry posts. When a trading group was outside, it was a taboo to mix with other trading groups, as it would easily cause trouble, and was not safe. Johnson was in Tang Tian's hands for a long time, and was disheveled for a long time. Although he did not meet any enemies for the past few days, but he could already smell the dangerous aura in the air, and continuously changed his direction without any warning. "I need to get rid of these annoying flies." The 5 scouts that were chasing realized that the monster army had entered the canyon, and immediately followed up. All of them had the same thought: the Gold Continent bandits want to escape. The others all nodded their heads. The God Armor army only had 200 men, and any random trading group had such a large number of guards, so no one would think of them as an army, and it was extremely easy for them to hide. We move out now? Such a powerful man, what other method will he think of? Chapter 849. Tang Tian, who was in the state of the God Armor, was expressionless. His heart was like an ancient well without any ripples. Everything around him was reflected in his heart like a lake, the flow of energy in the air. Even the bugs that were crawling in the cracks of the wall were all clearly seen. He became cautious. He squinted his eyes and observed his surroundings, but did not notice anything out of the ordinary. The Western Shang branch was flourishing, and the competition was extremely intense. Every step of promotion was extremely difficult. In the current situation, it was the easiest opportunity to be promoted. Suddenly, he stood up, and a dangerous aura floated in the air. In his vision, Tang Tian and the rest suddenly stopped. He was experienced, and had chosen a good location. It was a tall building not far from the Western Trader's warehouse. It was a place that allowed him to overlook the entire battlefield, and if the enemy reinforcements came from other directions, he could easily discover them. Furthermore, the place was extremely hidden, and was not easy to detect. But the tall building was similarly heavily guarded, and sneaking in took him quite a bit of effort. Blue Wind City's Western Traders. Johnson was half sprawled on the floor of the building. He did not look out from the window, as it would be too easy to be discovered. He dug a small hole in the wooden plank and observed from the hole. Long live the traders! In truth, it surprised him. It was an extremely shrewd and ruthless arrangement that perfectly utilized the terrain, and the soldiers that were deployed were extremely detailed, and their hiding positions were extremely ingenious. To them, it was an opportunity. He turned and smiled at Solomon. "I'll leave it all to you." But upon seeing Tang Tian and the rest stealth, Johnson knew how wrong he was. How is this something a military general with terrible tactics can do? Because of the severe banditry in the western region, the prices of the various mercenary groups had soared, and the lacerator's price was originally extremely high, but it had instantly doubled. But Ricky was still determined to hire the lacerators, and could finally sleep in peace. But very quickly, his gaze was attracted to Tang Tian and the rest. The sky slowly darkened, but Solomon did not move. He sat in an unassuming corner, hidden in the shadows. It was an extremely good hiding position, where the enemy would not be able to detect them, and if they were to encounter any sudden situations, he could easily launch a sneak attack. Whether it was moving forward or stopping, it was as clean as a knife, without the slightest bit of sloppiness. Tang Tian seemed to know where the danger was in advance, and he acted without the slightest hesitation. Their movements were silent, and their auras were restrained to the extreme. They were like wild beasts that were silently moving forward in the night. Johnson even saw Tang Tian and the others scuttling across the street behind a group of people without them noticing at all. Johnson felt that his impression of Tang Tian had been overturned once again. Everyone was filled with confidence. His spirit was suddenly shaken, and he hurriedly pulled himself together. He focused all his attention and was barely able to see it clearly. He was secretly amazed. Tang Tian and the others had almost completely blended into the darkness. Even he, who already knew the attack route, almost didn't notice them. How could the enemy notice them when they were unprepared? Is there a situation? With a notorious reputation, one had to work harder, be more cautious, and be more careful in order to survive. Johnson was not a member of the God Armor Army, and he was unable to assimilate into the team, and not only would he not be of any use in battle, he might even be a burden. Johnson knew himself, and took the initiative to request to be a sentry. Ricky came over to take a look and left satisfied. No one knew of the Lacerator's mercenary army's arrival, and even when they entered the city, they used the special passage of the trading organizations, so no one knew that the lacerators had already entered the trading organizations. It was not strange, as military leaders who were known for their bravery were extremely common. The enemy's defense gradually became clearer in Tang Tian's heart. Tang Tian's state of mind remained calm. In his senses, there was someone in the shadows behind the wall who seemed to have sensed something. At the same time, Solomon, who was in the shadows behind the wall, suddenly felt his mind tremble. The Western trader's bodyguards looked at the lacerators' members in awe. They were expressionless, but their bodies were emitting dense killing intent. Tang Tian suddenly stopped, and behind him, the 200 members all stopped at the same time, and quietly hid behind him. They were like shadows in the night, melting into the darkness. Johnson did not understand. From his angle, he did not see anything out of the ordinary. Surprise flashed past Tang Tian's indifferent eyes, but it did not cause any ripples. To Tang Tian, the sudden appearance of a powerful person had become a part of the entire battlefield. The lacerators who had completed their defense quietened down. They did not discuss or chat, they just quietly stood guard, their eyes filled with vigilance. As long as there was a slight movement, it would attract their attention. In the deep night, Blue Wind City's lights gradually dimmed, and the number of people on the streets gradually decreased. Lacerators! Oh my God, it's the lacerators! His words were like a heavy bomb, causing all of the bodyguards to explode. He waved his hand, and the members behind him rushed in and started to take over the defense. The edge of the battlefield was like a ripple that continued to extend outwards. One by one, the extremely light breathing, and the slow and undetectable heartbeat, slowly became clearer in Tang Tian's heart. Johnson's eyes were wide open, filled with shock. If we were to say that everyone's fighting spirit had been roused by Clan Elder Ricky's words, then the appearance of the lacerators' mercenary army had completely calmed them down. Instead, they were anticipating the arrival of the Gold Continent bandits, as it was practically giving them merits. Tang Tian's attention landed on the expert hidden in the shadows. For the other party to be able to sense a trace of danger, it meant that his strength was extraordinary. This point could be seen from the position that the other party was hiding in. The other party was extremely confident in his own strength. Previously, Tang Tian had displayed his tyrannical and unparalleled individual strength. And previously, when Tang Tian was not in charge of the battle plan, it left an impression on Johnson that Tang Tian's tactics were terrible. It was the first time that someone had sensed his arrival. Everyone knows about the recent matters. The organization has met with some trouble. But I believe that everyone has confidence in the organization. The organization has stood tall in the Western region for so many years, and has met with many waves, so there is nothing to make a fuss about. Everyone knows the rules of the organization, and the more important it is, whoever is able to stand out, whoever is able to contribute to the organization will definitely reward them. Solomon was used to leading the troops. They were a mercenary army, and if the leader was unable to lead, then no one would be willing to risk their lives for you. As expected of the lacerators, they are truly strong. Compared to the protectors of the organization, the lacerators had dealt with many such situations. They were extremely experienced, and did not take long to complete their preparations. The reverence in the eyes of the protectors increased. The moment an expert made a move, they would know if they were real or not. He had entered the observation post in advance, and patiently waited for Tang Tian and the rest to attack. But after waiting for half a day, there were still no signs of them, and just when he thought that the mission was cancelled, he suddenly noticed an unremarkable black figure. Everyone be alert! This was a killing move that he had set up. Clan Elder Rich's imposing voice caused everyone's heart to tremble, and the protectors on duty all straightened their backs. All of the protectors' faces turned red. Many of them had faces of disbelief. The Lacerators' mercenary army was one of the most famous mercenary armies in the honorable Marshall continent. They were bloodthirsty and cruel, with extremely powerful fighting capabilities. They were famous for not keeping any captives, and any bandits that fell into their hands would all be beheaded. Over time, once they accepted a mission, the various underworld organizations would automatically avoid them. He was unsure. Am I mistaken? But I have never been in a normal situation. Under the awakened state of the god armor, his control over the entire battlefield had reached an astonishing level. Every path that he took was definitely the most optimal path. Shadows, buildings, all of them were used to their fullest potential. They were able to perfectly restrain their aura, and use special techniques to eliminate sound. Even the flow of air was under their control. They used the opposite whirlpool, causing the air flow to become invisible, and not spread out like ripples. Rich was extremely pleased. He laughed bitterly in his heart. His own conclusions had been overturned time and time again, and Tang Tian had become even more unfathomable in his eyes. In the darkness, a cold glint flashed past Tang Tian's eyes. He lightly exerted force with his toes, and his figure disappeared. At the same time, the 200 figures behind him also disappeared. Clan Elder Rich was extremely satisfied with the effect of his words. He paused for a moment, then raised his hand and signaled to a sinister-looking man beside him. Of course, the organization is never stingy with money, and the organization will not put everyone in danger. For that, the organization has spent a lot of money to hire the famous Lacerators mercenary army to help us. Many of the young men's eyes lit up, and their breathing became hurried. The Western traders were powerful and had deep roots in the Western region. All of the bodyguards were locals of the Western region, and were deeply aware of this. It was an elite group. Solomon said proudly, "Do not worry." A group of black figures quietly moved forward in the darkness. A group of 200 men was not considered large, but it was not small either, but the black figures in front of him were like a single entity. What was even more shocking was that their movements were as smooth as flowing water. They were extremely smooth, and the quick and efficient movements caused him to feel a chill in his heart. The feeling that everything was under his control made Tang Tian's movements extremely decisive. Tang Tian stood still like a statue. "Haha, that's great. Gold Continent bandits, come quickly." Under normal circumstances, the enemy's arrangements were impeccable. "The man beside me is the leader of the Lacerators, Mr. Solomon. He will be setting up the defenses. I believe that everyone will trust Mr. Solomon's professionalism, so I hope that everyone will cooperate well." Just like what Clan Elder Rich had said, to the Western traders, it was just a small disturbance. No one believed that there would be any bandits that could truly shake the Western traders' rule in the Western region. Solomon enjoyed the gazes filled with reverence. He walked back and forth, not letting go of any details. He knew that the Lacerators were hated by many. As long as they revealed any flaws, countless of enemies in the darkness would pounce on them and tear them to shreds. He knew that very well. Chapter 850. The Blue Wind City in the darkness was instantly lit up as though it was daytime. Johnson, who was on the tower, felt as though he had fallen into an ice cellar. His face was as white as paper. A name flashed past his mind: the Lacerators' mercenary army. Elites of such strength could only be found in one place, and that was Temple. In his vision, every light regiment was rapidly changing. The resonance between them and the light swords became even more intense. The killing intent in the air was increasing at an alarming rate, as though something dangerous was breaking out of its cocoon. Solomon's stunning performance today had caused a ripple to surface in his tranquil state of mind. Solomon's face changed. What was worse was that the concentrated light did not cause any damage to the enemy. Like a group of snakes dancing in the darkness, rays of silver light floated out. Solomon's eyes also released a silver light. He was like a snake king, releasing an ice-cold aura that caused people's hearts to palpitate. But no one saw the indescribable fear in Solomon's silver eyes. His first reaction was, "Impossible." Without any hesitation, Tang Tian started to counterattack. The seemingly perfect resonance in front of him quickly broke down in his eyes, and one after another, invisible ripples were accurately captured. Tang Tian praised in his heart. It had to be said that the enemy had a profound understanding of energy resonance, to be able to create such a unique resonance. The wall in front of Solomon crumbled silently. Solomon did not hold back once he made his move. He was prepared in advance, and the sudden burst of silver light did not affect his vision. 90% of the enemies in front of this move would be dazzled by the sudden strong light. But the intense sense of danger lingering in his mind made him not dare to stop, regardless of whether he had hit it or not. He retreated. The battle had just begun. He squinted his eyes again, and released a strange hissing sound, like a poisonous snake in the darkness spitting out its tongue. SSSS. Tang Tian was surprised once again. Resonance. He felt an extremely intense resonance. The light sword in his opponent's hand had produced an intense resonance with the 10 light regiments around him. There was no need for them to clash with a tough opponent like the Lacerator for guerrilla warfare. What made everyone feel at ease was that the Lacerator's mercenary army looked to be filled with energy. They even used the powerful killing technique, Light Sword Whale Song, without hesitation. That red blade aura was very inconspicuous, but it was very strange. The silver threads of light flew towards him like snowflakes and entered the silver sword in his hand. An intense silver light covered the entire blade. The sharp and small blade disappeared. It was as if Solomon was holding a light sword. There was only one thing he needed to consider, and that was to complete the mission. A look of disbelief appeared on his face. Are the higher-ups going to take action against the Western traders? Solomon, who was moving at high speed, glanced out of the corner of his eye at the place where the concentrated light had just been bombarded. There was a huge gap, and the deep trench extended dozens of feet away. Along the way, there were only charred ruins. This completely subverted his understanding. It was actually the Lacerator's mercenary group. The time between the moment he sensed danger and the other party made their move was almost negligible. The faint sense of danger just now was like a weak flame in the darkness. But now, the other party's killing intent was almost tangible, like the sun in the darkness, so dazzling. If he knew that the Lacerator's mercenary group was stationed here, he would definitely think of a way to make Tang Tian cancel his plan. He was extremely vexed in his heart. Damn it, he did not discover the Lacerator's mercenary group at all in the day. His fatal oversight had led to a complete failure. He tiptoed, under the guidance of the law threads. The God Armor army became a group of shadows, and instantly disappeared. The number of sentries varied, ranging from 10 to 50 to 60, all of their bodies lit up with silver light at the same time. The silver light on their bodies quickly extended to their surroundings, and converged with the silver light on their comrades, transforming into an even bigger silver light regiment. Suddenly, he felt a cold intent in his heart. Who are these mysterious people? He felt that it was impossible. It was not that the other party's reaction was so fast, and that they thought of a way to break the resonance. What made him feel that it was impossible was that the other party's 200 attacks were of different colors, and were obviously of different attributes. The silver light that flew over coincidentally converged into a bamboo basket-sized silver ball of light, and the sword blade that was pressing down was like a whip that struck the silver ball of light. The Lacerator's mercenary group's most famous army killing technique, a light sword whale song. He knew how powerful the Lacerators were, and regardless of what others said, Macefield Tradings had once fought with the Lacerators. He had a deep impression of the cold and ruthless mercenary group, especially their powerful fighting capabilities. In that mission, they did not even use the light sword whale song or similar killing technique, and had already completed the mission perfectly. The heart-trembling buzzing sound resonated throughout the entire Blue Wind City. That thought flashed past his mind, but he quickly calmed himself down. The fight between the higher-ups had nothing to do with him. Could it be a trap? The 16 light regiments were like 16 sound chambers, and the light swords in their hands were like the source of the sound. Their resonance continued to increase. What he did not expect was that the other party's target was actually him. How many armies can survive the light sword wail song? Very powerful. Damn it. CSI. I missed. Bang. He did not have the time to think about such a problem. The killing intent was like a sword tip pointing at his forehead. The intense sense of danger caused Solomon's heart to palpitate. If it was any other military general, facing such a sudden change, with such an intense killing intent, they would either be at a loss or their minds would be blank. When he was choosing the location, he had already chosen his path of retreat. Never think about victory, that was the conclusion he had obtained from countless of battles. His body moved like lightning, forming a Z shape in the air. It's all my fault. 16 sentry posts, 16 light swords, all of them resonated together. Among the people who were alarmed, there were some who recognized the light sword wail song, and exclamations sounded out, but all of them were filled with joy. The famous Lacerators mercenary group was stationed in Blue Wind City, causing the safety of Blue Wind City to increase greatly. The silver ball of light suddenly exploded. The resonance had reached an unprecedented level, and the frequency of the light sword in his hand had also reached the limit of his control. How can such a heterogeneous energy form a resonance? At the same time, the scattered sentry posts all lit up with silver light. The light sword in Solomon's hand trembled, and the 16 light regiments all trembled at the same time. 200 different colored light auras suddenly lit up in the air. With a thought, Solomon's figure did not stop at all. He moved as fast as lightning, and entered the position he had long prepared. The moment he arrived, whoosh, he was surrounded by his subordinate. Gather the light. A silver light regiment formed by 50 sentry posts trembled, and a silver light beam gradually rose up from the light regiment. When the silver light beam was halfway up, everyone realized that it was a light sword. His silver eyes flashed with a look of madness. Solomon's back was drenched in sweat, but his sinister face was extremely sinister. It's time. Sigh. They were filled with confidence and anticipation. Solomon's shout suddenly came out in the night, causing the Western trader's bodyguards to be at a loss, while the Lacerators members instinctively leapt up. They had long held the most suitable weapons and swung them towards Solomon. How did he know I'm hiding here? Where did I reveal any flaws in my concealment? The enemy does not mind exposing himself at all. Zay's eyes turned cold, his heart was annoyed, his blade that he was confident in actually missed. His heart palpitated, but his heart surged with a rarely seen excitement. It had been a long time since he had such an exciting feeling. The surging silver light beam was like a flood that had opened the floodgates, pouring out in front of him. A red blade aura brushed past his retreating body, and swept past 2 Western traders' guards, causing 2 spurts of blood to fly out, but before they could disperse, they were strangely absorbed into the red blade aura. The remaining red blade aura quietly pierced into the wall, causing the wall to crumble into powder like a biscuit. There are no corpses. To be able to exchange blows with such an enemy, it is a rare opportunity. Come, let us see who has a deeper understanding of energy resonance. He was startled awake. His hands and feet were ice cold without any warmth. The enemy's 200 attacks are actually resonating. The enemy is using the resonance method to disrupt my own resonance. Solomon, who was famed for his ferocity, immediately displayed his outstanding side. Solomon's face did not have any panic, and unknowingly, a silver sword had appeared in his hand. His expression was solemn and solemn. The silver sword in his hand drew an arc like lightning. The silver sword light seemed to have an inexplicable attraction force. The silver light that was shooting through the sky deviated in the air and flew towards the silver sword in Solomon's hand, as if attracted by a magnet. In the darkness, a dozen silver light regiments suddenly lit up. Tang Tian's indifferent eyes lit up with a light. Temple? Solomon's nose immediately perspired with cold sweat. The citizens of Blue Wind City, who were alarmed by the commotion, had just woken up, and upon witnessing such a spectacular scene, all of them could not help but take in cold breaths, revealing looks of shock. When was the last time I was in such a difficult situation? He could not remember it anymore. He had not found any traces of the enemy, and the sense of danger that followed him like a shadow made him feel as though he was dancing on the tip of a blade and could lose his life at any time. A glint flashed past Tang Tian's eyes, and with a thought, the 200 people around him bloomed like a flower, drawing an arc and drifting in all directions. Buzz. Solomon's eyes constricted, his heart trembling. Previously, the enemy's aura was so intense, but I was able to lock onto the enemy's position effortlessly. Could it be a feint? But the ripple disappeared in an instant, and he regained his composure. But there was never an attack that was invulnerable. Solomon's body trembled slightly, but there was no fear in his eyes. Tang Tian did not care about Ji Zhe's feelings. The enemy's reaction was extremely fast, and the decisiveness of his counterattack and retreat surprised him. Ever since he had gained enlightenment on the god armor, he was like a god on the battlefield, and nothing could escape from his grasp. Countless silver lights that resembled arrows flew towards Solomon like rain, illuminating Solomon's figure that was hidden in the darkness. Solomon's heart relaxed. He finally felt safer. Upon receiving the order from the law threads, the 200 men took action at the same time. Gather Light was created by Solomon. It was extremely powerful, and was able to form a fan-shaped attack. As long as the enemy was within the attack, they would not be able to escape. Are they really bandits? Impossible. It is impossible for there to be such powerful bandits. The enemy's understanding of energy resonance is definitely not below my own. This is definitely not something a bandit leader should have. Resonance. The resonance severely interfered with the surrounding energy, causing the energy in the space to stop. The light sword in his hand rose up inch by inch. His movements were extremely slow, as though the light sword in his hand was extremely heavy. Solomon's abdomen suddenly retracted, and the curved silver sword in his hand suddenly pressed down. Chapter 851. The other party was going to burst him. There were not many in the God Armor army who trained in light laws, and the reason why they were able to imitate the energy undulations was because of the undulations from the law thread. At first, they felt that it was a novel experience. The clear vibrating sound swept across the surface of the sea formed by the silver light. The originally calm sea of silver light suddenly became turbulent. The dazzling silver light had already connected into one, like a floating sea of silver light. The silver light was so intense that even from afar, everyone's eyes felt like they were being pricked by needles. While everyone was shocked, they were also filled with confidence. Tang Tian was in the middle of the crowd. The silver light around him was so dense that it was almost tangible. His body involuntarily trembled, and his breathing quickened. His eyes widened. This was an incomparably wonderful historical moment, and he did not want to miss a single detail. The scene in front of him was incomparably beautiful. The power of the light sword was close to the limit of his control. How could this be? Everyone was brimming with confidence. During this period of time, the wind and rain had caused everyone to be on tenterhooks. They were all hoping that the lacerators would emerge victorious. At this moment, the one who was most pleased with himself was undoubtedly Ricky. Hiring the Ripper required him to take a certain amount of risk. If nothing happened and he spent such a huge sum of money for nothing, his mortal enemies would definitely make use of this to attack him. What welcomed the roar in his heart was a pair of extremely cold eyes. Even such an intense silver light could not conceal its existence. Solomon immediately sensed it, but he sneered in his heart. Courting death. However, Tang Tian knew very well that it was impossible to be infinitely strengthened, but that was not the main point. This had already exceeded the scope of their daily training. The sea of silver light was too dazzling, and it also caused the area below to be covered in deep darkness. Come on. Solomon did not like to be controlled. He created the Lacerators, and quickly developed it into one of the most famous mercenary groups in the Honorable Marshall Continent. Mercenary armies held a low position in the Honorable Marshall Continent, as the Honorable Marshall Continent's army system was extremely mature. They had many of them, and their ranks were strict. The history of the Honorable Marshall Continent's expansion was a history of wars. The number of armies with outstanding achievements were as many as the hairs on an ox, and many of the silver-grade armies had glorious pasts. Every army's killing moves were different, the military leaders were different, the soldiers were different, naturally their killing moves were also different. At this moment, he finally understood Tang Tian's intentions. A gold-rank army killing move in the entire Sacred Saint Galaxy, it was the center of attention. The 16 light swords felt his battle intent and trembled even more violently. Solomon suddenly saw his opponent's movements clearly. His body was like a bowstring, his fists were pulled back. Solomon had never raised the light sword wail song to this level. He felt that his body was about to be torn apart. As time passed, an indescribable fear slowly grew in his heart. His opponent was challenging him to a battle of control over the lightsaber wail song. He was overestimating himself. More importantly, he had picked the wrong enemy. To the God Armor army that originated from the Sin domain, the resonance of energy, from the perspective of laws, was actually much simpler. Simulating energy was a basic skill that they had to practice every day after stepping into the sanctuary realm. His widened eyes were filled with shock. But following the change in resonance, they had no choice but to focus on capturing the undulations from the law threads, because the undulations were changing and becoming more and more intense. The multicolored light auras were gradually being dyed silver. In the eyes of outsiders, it was the unique might of the lightsaber wail song. But Solomon was extremely clear that it was not the enemy being corroded by the energy, but the enemy's energy undulation that was continuously approaching the lightsaber's energy undulation. If he was able to kill the bandits, the huge merit would be enough for him to rise a few more levels and enter the core circle of authority in the organization. His face was flushed red with excitement. It was something that he had fantasized about countless of times, but it was currently so close to him that it was within his reach. The might of army killing moves was also as different as heaven and earth, thus there were strict classifications, from the most ordinary bronze rank, to the silver rank, then to the gold rank, and the highest was the unique rank. The silver sea of light continued to rise at an astonishing rate. In such an environment, the position of the mercenary army could be imagined, as the majority of them became the subordinates of the rich and powerful organizations. The Lacerators did not, because of Solomon, because of the lightsaber wail song. The initially heart-palpitating rumbling sounds became softer and softer, until it completely disappeared. But the formless pressure became more and more substantial, causing the spectators to feel as though a boulder was pressing down on their hearts, causing them to feel an indescribable discomfort. The discomfort continued to increase, and many people could not take it and flew far away. In Temple, which was filled with talents, a gold-rank army killing move was the threshold to becoming a powerful martial artist, and among the commoners, military generals who possessed a gold-rank army killing move were even rarer, showing Solomon's talent. Then let me add some fuel to the fire. The God Armor army's silver light became even brighter. They took the initiative to increase the resonance effect. Solomon, who held onto his sword with both hands, closed his eyes, his entire body and mind increasing the resonance. It was in this blind spot that a drop of perspiration flowed down Solomon's nose bridge. The enemy's energy resonance is truly unique. The most unique thing is that the enemy's resonance is not at a fixed frequency, but through the resonance after strengthening, it will reach resonance again and become even stronger. Everyone's eyes were wide open, their faces were filled with shock, the majority of them were filled with curiosity, To be able to personally witness a gold-rank army killing move, it was a rare opportunity. The dazzling silver light sword was extremely eye-catching in the darkness. The heart-palpitating rumbling sounds brought along a terrifying might that enveloped the entire city. The enemy's energy undulation was gradually approaching them. Light Sword Whale's Song, the Lacerator's mercenary army's most reputable killing move, a gold-rank army killing move. Light Sword Whale's Song was created by him. The silver light's energy undulation was extremely unique. The silver thread's energy undulation was constantly resonating and changing, thus forming the unique Light Sword Whale's Song that was releasing the energy undulation. "You want to use my ultimate technique to defeat me?" What wishful thinking! The silver light in his vision was solemn and dignified, causing him to be extremely excited. Such a powerful might, who could block it? If not for Solomon's cold and murderous personality, and not being liked by Temple, he would have long been recruited into Temple. It was like an ancient desolate beast that had awoken from its slumber, and was ready to move. But what truly made Solomon fearful was that it was losing control. The surface of the silver light was rising at a speed visible to the naked eye. Solomon forced himself to calm down. The enemy actually thought of using such a method to avoid the damage from the Light Sword Whale's Song. It is truly powerful. How is that possible? Inside the silver sea of light, everyone were like statues made of silver. All of them had solemn expressions. No one had any smiles on their faces. At the start, they were still calm, but as time passed, they became more and more strained. Solomon's fighting intense sword, the silver light in his eyes became even more intense. His other hand held onto the light sword, and he closed his eyes. I made the right bet. Solomon's thoughts seemed to have stopped. His mind was blank. He watched as the simple and unadorned fist struck empty air. Let's go to hell together. The vibration from the light sword in his hand became stronger and stronger. When the light sword started to resonate and release a sound that caused people's hearts to palpitate, the dazzling silver light was like a terrifying poison that started to spread at an astonishing speed. The 5 colored light auras on the 200 men's bodies were gradually corroded into silver. Very few people knew that possessing a gold-rank army killing move was one of the conditions to become a lieutenant general. When the light aura dissipates, my dream will be realized. The resonance continued, and the silver light also started to change. The further it went, the stronger the silver light would become, and the burden on the soldiers would increase, and without special training, they would not be able to endure it. As long as the enemy could not endure it, they would reveal signs, and at that time, under the even more tyrannical silver light, the enemy's flesh and blood would instantly turn into ashes. As expected of a gold-rank army killing move, the light sword in his hand had already become a light pillar. Solomon used all of his strength to hug onto it, as though he was hugging onto a berserk fierce beast, and blood leaked out of the corner of his mouth. The enemy is actually able to directly imitate it. It completely toppled all of his knowledge. How can they still persevere? What are they trying to do? A gold-rank army killing move appearing on a mercenary army was something that had never happened before. The Lacerator's mercenary army's reputation soared. Army killing move was just a common term. It usually referred to those powerful and specific tactics, and was the trump card of every army. In the sacred Saint Galaxy where armies ruled, the development of army tactics had a long history. Army killing moves were such products. These types of tactics were powerful to the point that they could turn the tides of a battle, but the conditions to execute them were harsh. Some of them would cause the soldiers to overdraft, some would cause the military generals to bear an astonishing burden, and might even cause them to be injured. So unless it was a crucial moment, they would not be activated, and that was why everyone thought that the Lacerator's mercenary army was filled with energy. If he had not personally experienced it, he would definitely not believe that there was such a strange way of fighting. The God Armor army in the silver light had a layer of mercury on their skin, making them look no different from the other small units of the Lacerator's army. Wait a minute. The silver light in the field became even more dazzling, causing the entire Blue Wind City to become as bright as day. Buzz. He wanted to make the resonance even more intense. A trace of killing intent flashed past his cold eyes. Once panic started, it was difficult to extinguish it, and he felt that the light sword in his hand was attacking him even more intensely. Not only did the light sword's silver light not harm the enemy, but it seemed to have found its own kind, and started to fuse with the enemy's silver light. If this continues, in theory, it can become infinitely stronger. But how long can you guys last? Tang Tian's face was expressionless. The light pillar in his hand could explode at any moment. His heart was filled with despair, but the determination in his bones made him unwilling to fail. Everyone who witnessed the scene all sucked in cold air. They had never heard of such a powerful energy corrosion before. They could almost see the result. Once the silver light completely spread, it would mean the death of the bandit. What a terrifying light sword whale song! The first time the light sword whale song appeared, it had shaken the entire honorable Marshall continent. Chapter 852. He immediately retreated a large distance, which saved his life. We have already sent out scouts to patrol the skies above the main area. The Gold Continent bandits are powerful, but their flying capabilities are weak. We have the advantage in the air. As long as we lock onto the skies above the canyon, they will definitely not be able to escape from our eyes. They did not know what kind of uproar the battle would cause. At that moment, Tang Tian and the rest heaved a sigh of relief. Although they looked calm, it was actually extremely dangerous, and if they were slightly careless, they would have lost their lives. His mind became even clearer, and many things became clear, but he did not rejoice, but remained as calm as ever. The unprecedented concentration caused Tang Tian, who was in the state of god armor, to be extremely pure. Tang Tian extended his body. The 200 law threads connected to everyone were like 200 bowstrings that were slowly pulled back. The simple and unadorned punch hit empty air, similarly hitting the node of resonance. Johnson then realized that his legs were trembling. We have lost track of them. They had infiltrated into Bill's Great Canyon, and our men have also disappeared. It is highly possible that they have perished. Inside the silver light, Tang Tian and the rest were rushing out with all their might. The large meeting room was dead silent, everyone was stunned by the news, and only Warren's dreamy voice could be heard. The silver light was like water, it ignited upon contact. My apologies, no one is to disturb us during the military meeting. Only until now, when he saw the exhausted people, and the silver light that lit up the night sky, did he finally believe that they had truly won. Oh my God! That is truly terrible news. Even if they flew over 50 kilometers away, they would still be able to see the silver light in the night. Everyone became quiet. The silver light that was gushing out was extremely eye-catching in the night, and it was obvious that Blue Wind City was already a living hell. Blue Wind City's branch had invited the Lacerators to help, but who knew that they would be ambushed that very night? The Lacerators used the light sword whale song, but all of them died. Blue Wind City. Blue Wind City was affected and was completely erased. To be able to reach such a position, none of the military leaders were useless. When he saw the Lacerator soldiers being engulfed by the silver light, an indescribable fear took over every part of his body. However, it also gave him a glimmer of hope. The situation was different from what he had expected. He muttered to himself. The formless net was the lost surface. Only then would Silverlight treat them as one of its kind, and they would not be harmed. As long as there was the slightest mistake, the silver light would become fatal. Perhaps he could use the Shin equipment to escape, but Ji-Zhe and the others would be swallowed by the silver light. At that time, he held his head with both hands and let out an unconscious sigh. When he found out about the light sword whale song, he thought that Tang Tian and the others were dead for sure. How many armies can survive a gold-rank army killing technique? Perhaps Tang Tian could rely on his abnormally strong personal strength to survive, but the others definitely had no chance of survival. They had to synchronize their energy undulations with the silver light. The power of the silver light exceeded Tang Tian's expectations. He focused all his attention and tried his best to simulate the frequency of the silver light. The silver light that had gone out of control had also gone out of control. It was different from its previous stability. It had become unpredictable. Solomon's last thought was the endless silver light. The silver light that he was once extremely familiar with had engulfed him. Clan Elder Warren, you cannot go in. Master is currently holding a military conference. The group of people did not dare to stop. They flew at full speed, and only stopped after flying over 50 kilometers away. Tang Tian suddenly realized, lost surface. We have truly won. Oliver nodded his head in satisfaction. His subordinates' reactions were not slow, and they were extremely experienced, able to grasp the opponent's weakness. Don't worry about them, Oliver said slowly. Leave this place. Clan Elder Warren's face was pale white, with a trace of fear. His lips trembled. Master, not good, not good. It was this trace of hope that made him not flee, but chose to persevere. Until he saw Tang Tian and the rest bringing along a silver light and rushing out from the sea of silver light, he could not believe his own eyes. Oliver's eyes flashed with a gloomy look. Bill's Great Canyon's terrain was extremely unique. It spanned over 1,000 li, with countless of branches and dark holes. It was definitely a good place to hide. Oliver said indifferently. The dissatisfaction in his eyes was quickly concealed. Yes. His subordinate hesitated for a moment, then said, The Western traders are pressing us more urgently. Beside him, everyone looked at Blue Wind City in the silver light, all of them in a daze. Everyone was still immersed in the fear of surviving the calamity. When they suddenly saw their master suddenly falling down, they were all startled. Luckily, Ji Zhe's reaction was the fastest. His figure flashed and caught Tang Tian. Tang Tian's face changed. The silver light's irregular undulation had become extremely clear. A commotion came out from outside, causing Oliver to frown, an intense dissatisfaction surfacing in his heart. The Western traders were becoming more and more outrageous, to actually be so arrogant and despotic. Oliver knew that he was able to stay in his position as a lieutenant general for so many years, although he had the help of the Western traders, but more importantly, he did not make any mistakes. Solomon only felt as though he was struck by lightning. Before he could react, the light pillar that he was holding onto suddenly lit up with a silver light aura. When Tang Tian finished speaking, his vision turned black and he lost consciousness. Don't be anxious, the enemy is alone, and we have the initiative. As long as they reveal themselves, we can surround them at any place. I have an urgent matter to report to Master. The walls that were able to withstand the attacks of warship weapons, the layers of defense that were built with money, were like paper in front of the silver light, and were instantly destroyed. But the changes that happened next caused him to be dumbstruck once again. Oliver's heart jumped. He had a bad premonition, and immediately asked, Clan Elder Warren, what happened to you? What happened? Clan Elder Warren's entire body trembled and said, Blue Wind City. Blue Wind City is gone. What if Tang Tian and the rest won? There were no big battles in the western region, but he had performed extremely well in suppressing the bandits, and that was the true crux. As long as he performed well, his position would be stable. Less credit? What does that matter? Isn't the head of the 5 great generals Mu Jixia the same? The rest of them immediately followed Johnson and flew out of the city. No, I have an urgent matter. I need to see Master Oliver immediately. Blue Wind City is completely erased. The silver light that was out of control was like a collapsing ocean that flowed wantonly. Gone? Oliver was startled, but in the next moment, his expression became fierce. What do you mean by gone? Clan Elder Warren, explain it to me clearly. Ji and the rest immediately felt the change in Tang Tian. Their originally sluggish footsteps suddenly became smooth. They were like fishes living in the silver light. They were extremely compatible with the silver light, as though they had become one with it. Bang! Inside the silver sea of light, a group of figures soared into the sky, bringing forth silver flames. All of them are gone. Clan Elder Warren spoke as though he was in a dream, his eyes filled with fear. The silver light was a high-grade energy that had been strengthened by the resonance of the light sword whale song, and was filled with astonishing destructive power. The Western Traders' Guards were the first to be engulfed, and before they could even make a sound, they had melted into the silver light. The lacerators released dazzling silver light from their bodies. The silver light pierced through their skin, revealing their bones. The silver flames combusted from their bodies, causing them to wail and wail. They struggled with all their might, but the silver flames had already seeped out of their bodies, causing them to be engulfed in flames. The wails gradually died down, and they gradually became faint in the silver light, until they disappeared. The bad feeling in Oliver's heart became even stronger, and his voice became sharp. Clan Elder Warren, what exactly happened? With a groan, he pulled everyone and rushed out. As long as he was stable, not only would the Western traders not dare to fall out with him, they would definitely rope him in. Lieutenant General Oliver listened to his subordinate's report expressionlessly. He was 54 years old, dressed in a neat and tidy military uniform. His hair was slightly white, and his face that was maintained well still had traces of the hardships he had gone through in the past. To be able to rise to the ranks of lieutenant general in Temple, the competition he had experienced was extremely cruel. All of them are gone. With the threat of death and unprecedented concentration, Tang Tian entered a strange state. Oliver fell to the ground, his face as white as paper. They had killed the lacerators under the gold rank army killing technique. Just at that moment, the pale-faced Johnson flew over and said, "Over here." Oliver spoke out indifferently. His voice was low and powerful, causing people to unknowingly believe in him. Temple never lacked powerful military generals. They killed the lacerators. Blue Wind City. Blue Wind City. Clan Elder Warren trembled even more. When he realized that Tang Tian had fainted, his face changed and anxiously shouted, "Leave this place." His subordinate immediately went to open the door, and a figure immediately rushed in. And as long as he lost the battle, his seemingly stable position would quickly crumble. Countless people were eyeing his position. There were only 12 lieutenant generals, and if he wanted to go up, someone had to give up their position. Although he had a close relationship with the Western traders, but he was never their puppet. The cooperation between him and the Western traders was just to obtain what they needed. As for how they fought, the Western traders could not interfere with him. Lacerators? Oliver's eyes twitched. Where did the lacerators come from? But the words that came after made him panic. He stood up and bellowed, "What's wrong with Blue Wind City?" Time seemed to have slowed down, the silver light around him. The frequency of the undulations became clearer in Tang Tian's eyes. It was so clear that he could even see the dazzling and dangerous silver light, an invisible net that was constantly undulating. When Oliver saw Elder Warren, he couldn't help but be taken aback. Is that still Clan Elder Warren? His hair was white, his face was filled with wrinkles, as though he had aged more than 10 years. Let him in. Everyone looked at each other. An indescribable fear filled every corner of their bodies. He had fought with the lacerators before, and had seen the light sword whale song, but the energy undulations that continued to rise, as well as the silver sea of light that surpassed his imagination, caused him to feel instinctive fear. Oh my God! As they flew higher and higher, the silver light and flowing flames were like raindrops sliding down a lotus leaf, sprinkling into a silver rain. It was a very beautiful sight. Chapter 853. All of the structures had disappeared, and there was only one possibility, They had been destroyed by the energy. He was extremely glad that they did not escape. There was only one reason why they did not escape. After Tang Tian fainted, he had not woken up. All of them were elites among elites, true killing machines. They had terrifying strength and were cold and emotionless. They obeyed orders unconditionally, and did not fear death. Yes. Countless figures ran. Johnson and the rest disguised themselves as a small merchant group, and did not stand out in the crowd. When everyone noticed the battle, they were already enveloped by the silver sea of light, and no one could see them clearly. The generals who had just lost their support immediately reignited their fighting spirit. Charles praised, "Solomon is dead, but they are still able to escape. His strength is truly unfathomable. I am now curious, how did the Western traders offend such a powerful man? Furthermore, such a powerful expert should not be a nameless person. Truly makes me excited." All of this information was not a secret, and Johnson did not need to spend much effort to obtain it. Glancing at the surroundings, there were soldiers everywhere, and it was heavily guarded. Not only that, all the roads leading to the nearby regions were sealed, and an inescapable net was set up. The Banner of Knights was not an ordinary army, but was the core strength of Temple. The Banner of Knights had never recruited from the outside world, and would select young children from all over the place to groom them from young. All of these children had to undergo extremely harsh training from young, and face extremely cruel competition, with layers upon layers of elimination and selection. Charles stopped in his tracks and suddenly said, "At such a crucial time for the southern expedition, such a vicious thing actually happened in our borders. It is unforgivable." Charles retracted his smile. His handsome face revealed a formless might. "Remove Oliver from his duties, all the armies under him will be temporarily under me, the rest of them will not be changed, and await further orders. Send people to escort Oliver to Temple, and accept the interrogation of Temple's clan elder." He and Fu Jingji looked at each other, and saw the worry in each other's eyes. Tang Tian had not woken up, and without a leader, everyone was at a loss as to what to do next. Oliver and Lance, who were stationed in the western region, received unprecedented criticism, and Temple requested for them to immediately find the culprit. Not only that, Temple had even sent out a specialized investigation group to investigate the matter. Charles' face turned cold with an unprecedented seriousness. He bent down and used his hand to touch the ground. It was very hard, just like touching glass. This was the result of the super high temperature melting the rocks on the ground, forming something similar to glass. Sophie did not turn her head and coldly said to the people behind her, "Stay alert." The fanaticism in Charles's eyes disappeared, and he smiled warmly again. "You're right. Let's go." This order would be sent as soon as possible, and Oliver's fate would be decided. All of them were citizens of Blue Wind City that had escaped from Blue Wind City. Sophie spoke out coldly, "Gold-rank army killing moves do not have such power. Then I guess he will feel the pinch." Charles smiled and said, "As you said, he will lose his salary for 3 years. The one who came to report was the captain of Blue Wind City's local guards. He had a fat physique, and upon seeing so many important figures, he could not stop sweating. However, he also knew that if he didn't perform well now, he would only be in a worse state. Therefore, even though he was nervous and trembling a little, he still described the situation. "Yes," someone in the darkness answered. The fatty did not understand the profoundness of the situation, but upon hearing the fatty's description, Sophie and the rest understood what had happened. A look of surprise surfaced on Charles's face. Blue Wind City was completely in ruins, all of the buildings were destroyed. There were no broken bricks or tiles, no broken walls. Blue Wind City's original location was empty, it was an endless charred ground, with only irregular pits. All of the pits were of different depths, and were densely packed together, like a beehive. "Yes," Sophie reminded, Be careful of his soldiers, there are only 100 to 200 of them, but the energy resonance produced was able to cause Solomon's light sword whale song to lose control. A group of people walked on top of the ruins. Sophie held onto her sword and walked beside Charles. Charles frowned. The light sword whale song is a gold-rank army killing move, right? In this matter, Oliver's responsibility is even greater. Lance has just been transferred over. It can be considered an undeserved calamity. The one who spoke was a young and handsome man. He was dressed in a flawless white robe. His golden hair was like a lion's, and his light blue pupils had an indescribable charm. The Battle of Blue Wind City shook the entire Sacred Saint galaxy. Charles said to the fatty, "Describe the scene to me again." The silent troops behind her were like flowers scattered by a goddess. They formed over 100 beautiful golden arcs in the sky, and scattered to every corner of Blue Wind City. Go and see the scene. Charles did not speak anymore. Energy resonance. The banner of knights. When the generals who were welcoming them saw the golden armored warriors, all of their faces turned pale white. 3 years. Sophie said coldly. Yes. The fatty immediately nodded his head. Sophie's tone was ice-cold, filled with killing intent. The enemy used energy resonance to continuously strengthen Solomon's light sword whale song, causing it to break through the critical point, causing it to collapse. They never thought that they would be able to escape from capture. Who knows the situation at that time? Yes. All of the generals replied in unison. When the fatty finished, he waved his hand, and the fatty immediately retreated. Charles revealed a satisfied look. I need generals with fighting spirit and ability. I hope that all of you do not disappoint me. After speaking for so long, the fatty finally calmed down. He regained his usual eloquence, and described the situation vividly. Upon receiving the news, Temple was enraged. Temple's actions were swift and decisive. The legendary number 1 elites of Temple, the banner of knights. Sophie did not care about the excited Charles. She turned and ordered coldly, "Increase the search. We cannot let go of a single inch of grass." All of their faces were pale, their scalps went numb, and their bodies trembled. The scene of Lieutenant General Oliver being escorted away was still fresh in their minds, and only then did they truly understand how furious Temple was with this matter. An indescribable light aura flashed past Charles's eyes. Solomon most probably did not expect that the opponent would use his most proficient domain, and with his ultimate technique, he would be easily killed. There is always a taller mountain. This person's understanding of energy resonance far surpasses Solomon. That is not a reason, Sophie said coldly. She knew that Charles admired Lance more. Sophie immediately understood Charles's determination to get rid of Oliver. She did not have the slightest bit of sympathy, and said simply, "Oliver needs to take responsibility for this." Noticing their fear, Charles smiled and said warmly, "It has already happened. Lieutenant General Oliver made a mistake. Temple will be lenient. But it is not over yet. All of you are Temple's most trusted backbone. I hope that all of you can cooperate with each other in the upcoming operation, and display your usefulness, and wipe away this humiliation. Temple will never mistreat those who have done meritorious service. If any of you can do something, I will personally report to Temple for you." "Of course." Charles shrugged his shoulders, his face revealing a warm smile. "That is why we are here. It is said that Oliver lost the Gold Continent bandits. Temple's personally trained lieutenant general actually lost track of a group of bandits. It is truly a disgrace. Could it be that all of his energy has been spent on how to earn money from the Western traders?" Charles facepalmed in distress. His own subordinate was always so serious. "All right, since I am used to it, if I do not give an answer, she will definitely be serious to the end," he said helplessly. "A year of forfeiture, what do you think? Willpower, talent, diligence, the final victor would have the qualifications to enter the banner of knights." Although there were not many casualties among the citizens, but in the history of the honorable Marshall continent, there had never been a city that was wiped out. especially when they were at the critical juncture of the southern expedition. For such a terrible thing to happen, Temple's anger could be imagined. Johnson saw the people all over the mountains and plains, and for some reason, he relaxed. One after another, tall and sturdy golden figures landed on the ground. Bang, bang, bang. When he heard that the silver light was getting stronger and forming a sea of light, Charles seemed to have thought of something, and was shocked. His identity was extremely respected. He was the current sacred son of Temple Charles. A warship with Temple's insignia swept across the sky at an astonishing speed. And when he heard the last part, the sea of silver light had gone out of control, and silver flames surged out from the lacerators' bodies, Charles's expression became extremely solemn. At that moment the unconscious Tang Tian finally regained consciousness, and slowly opened his eyes. But he thought that the reason for Blue Wind City's disappearance was the light sword whale song. "Where's Lance?" Sophie asked coldly. When they arrived at Blue Wind City, they were welcomed by Oliver's subordinates. All of them had worried looks, as though they were worried for their future. Oliver had already been escorted back to Temple, and he did not dare to struggle. "Let's go down," Charles said, and took the lead to jump down. Beside him floated a female spirit general. She had a devilish figure, a pure and holy face, so beautiful that it was suffocating. She was clad in a gold armor, and behind the armor was a pair of snow-white energy wings, making her look like a legendary angel. Layers of beautiful scales weaved into a pair of golden gloves. Holding onto the hilt, she stood upright. The large sword was as tall as her chest, the blade was wide, the sword hilt could be held with both hands, the sheath was covered with profound and beautiful patterns, with the sun pattern that symbolized light being the most eye-catching. Sophie then turned and spoke coldly to Charles. "As a sacred son, you should come out and comfort the citizens." The fear on everyone's faces immediately disappeared, and their low morale was roused. "That's right, the matter is not over yet. If we can achieve great merits in front of sacred son Charles, and leave a deep impression on him, our future will definitely be bright." In truth, other than the Western traders and the lacerators' mercenary group, Blue Wind City's casualties were negligible. The commotion of the battle awoke everyone from their dreams. The light sword whale song's resonance became stronger, and continued for a long time. The silver flames that formed at the end had astonishing destructive power, but its speed was not fast, giving everyone time to escape. The orders that everyone had received previously only stated that Sacred Son Charles would lead the investigation team. No one had expected that Sacred Son Charles would actually lead the Honorable Martial Banner of Knights. No one knew that they were the culprits that wiped out Blue Wind City, and in everyone's minds, even if the bandits were still alive, they would have long escaped. Why would they stay there? Yes. Chapter 854. "Carl, I never thought that you would come as well." Charles smiled and welcomed him, as though he had met an old friend. Temple's intentions were clear. They wanted to eliminate the bandits in the shortest time possible. Johnson sighed. Carl immediately spoke up. "Your Highness, rest assured, this matter was started by the Western traders, and the Western traders will not shirk their responsibility. The new city construction plan will be submitted to Temple soon, and all of the expenses will be taken care of by the Western traders, and the Western traders will bear at least half of the expenses." Sophie stood by Charles's side, her gaze sweeping across the surroundings from time to time, causing an undetectable undulation to spread out with her as the center. Charles revealed a satisfied look. The reconstruction of Blue Wind City had to be carried out. It concerned Temple's face, and at the same time, it concerned his own. Following that, Tang Tian was shocked by his own thoughts. The Honorable Martial Banner of Knights did not have many people, but every single one of them were extremely powerful. Brimming with destructive radiant aura, every single one of them was like a sun that was covered in armor, containing an endless destructive power. Charles knew his knight commander's temper, and did not mind. His gaze landed on the big bearded man walking towards him. The boorish-looking man who looked like a bandit was the highest authority of the Western traders, Carl. Charles's gaze landed on a transport ship not far away, and chuckled. The people from the Western traders are here. Temple is truly angry this time. The sacred sun and the honorable martial banner of knights are the true core of Temple, and hold important positions in Temple. Ordinary matters will definitely not require the sacred sun and the honorable martial banner of knights to move. For some reason, Tang Tian paid close attention to Johnson's casual rumors. In the sacred Saint Galaxy, only the honorable martial continent was researching on spirits, and had already achieved substantial breakthroughs. The great sun was extremely bright, overbearing and oppressive. Spirit generals were extremely rare in the sacred Saint Galaxy, and such a powerful female spirit general was even more shocking. She was the strongest spirit general that Tang Tian had ever seen. Even Sima Zhao's Magatama could not compare to her. His gaze had only landed on her for a moment, but it had already caused her to be on guard. And the undulation that she released after that, no one else noticed it, but Tang Tian was shocked. Being swept by the master's gaze, Johnson subconsciously felt as though he was being seen through. Temple is wise, your highness is wise. Carl revealed a look of gratitude. Kill Charles and the Knights Templar. Sophie's scout wave was superb, and even the slightest change could not escape her eyes. After saying that, Sophie turned around and left. Could he defeat Sophie? Tang Tian was not confident. He could not help but sigh. In this team, the role of an adult was irreplaceable. Charles had an enchanting smile on his face. His words were like a spring breeze. It is our duty. Temple has the responsibility to protect everyone's property, Carl. You don't have to worry about it. An extremely daring idea popped into Tang Tian's mind. However, His Excellency's eyes were unusually bright. Even the darkness of the night could not obscure them. His gaze landed on the master, and when he met the master's eyes, he could not help but lower his head. When Xiao Chen woke up this time, his aura had undergone a huge change. The powerful aura from before had disappeared, becoming extremely ordinary. If he were to be thrown into a crowd, he would not be eye-catching at all. Sophie scanned the area again. Still nothing. There was one more person. Tang Tian didn't think so. Heaven's Road martial techniques. Johnson had also noticed the commotion in the distance. When he looked over, his face changed, and he exclaimed softly, "Sacred Sun! The banner of knights!" Charles chuckled. Sophie was just so inflexible. He teased, "You have to get used to us being the center of attention. How can we not attract attention? And you're so beautiful as a fairy. It is normal for people to be unable to control themselves. Did you discover anything?" It was true that the matter in Blue Wind City was huge, but the reason why they sent out the Sacred Sun and the Banner of Knights was because Temple did not have any other heavyweight powerhouses. Jia had to oversee the situation, and the other four great generals were not around, thus Temple would brazenly send out the Sacred Sun and the Banner of Knights. Temple also understood that at the critical juncture of the southern expedition, maintaining the peace within their borders was the most important thing. Tang Tian looked at the group of people in the distance with interest, and asked Johnson, "Who are they?" "Relax, Sophie." Charles chuckled. "Do you think they will stop here?" But from the feedback, they did not find any suspicious people. Tang Tian, who possessed extraordinary intuition, felt that the man in front of him was not simple at all. Sophie retracted her gaze and did not say a word. Her impression of the Western traders was terrible. Others might need to consider the financial groups like the Western traders, and could provide them with help, but Sophie did not care about that, and naturally did not need to give them any face. That is definitely bad news. Although he did not know the name of the undulation, but Tang Tian recognized it with one look, and secretly praised it for being powerful. The undulation was like a bait, and could easily cause the energy in their bodies to react. If not for their zero-energy bodies, they would have been exposed. "Your Highness!" Karl immediately ran in front of Charles and bowed respectfully, and spoke with fear. I have caused so much trouble for Temple, and even caused your Highness to personally come. This lowly one truly deserves to die. Charles spoke warmly. The Western traders are the role models of the various continents in the Western region, and are also the pillar. I hope that the Western traders can be a role model. Blue Wind City has been destroyed, so the construction of a new city cannot be delayed. On this matter, Temple cannot keep an eye on it. I hope that the various trading organizations can work together and rebuild the Grand Blue Wind City. He never thought that the commander of the Honorable Martial Banner of Knights would actually be a female spirit general. The sacred Saint Galaxy was not conducive to the formation of living spirits, but if living spirits were to be born, it would be extremely easy for them to grow stronger in the sacred Saint Galaxy. And if the spirit general was extremely powerful, then the speed of improvement would be extremely fast, as the energy in the sacred Saint Galaxy was too dense. Sima Zhao's Magatama was the same. She seemed to change every day. The strength of the Honorable Martial Banner of Knights did not exceed Tang Tian's expectations. His gaze landed on the sacred son Charles, who had a smile on his face the entire time, and looked no different from an ordinary person. I will go patrol. Charles's smile was warm and friendly, and extremely approachable. He consoled the old, caressed the children's heads and encouraged them warmly, and asked them what problems they encountered, and what they needed him to do. No one expected that the noble sacred son would be so humble and friendly, and in the blink of an eye, he had subdued everyone. Everyone's gaze towards him were filled with respect and support. Many of them were kneeling on the ground and crying. Not at the moment, Sophie said coldly. She felt that it was strange. She had truly felt a gaze on her, but when she turned around, she did not notice anything. Out of caution, she had even released the scouting ripple. There was still Sophie. If the Honorable Martial Banner of Knights were like the sun that was filled with destructive power, then Sophie was like the deepest darkness in the sea of energy, not revealing any chi. The scouting ripple was a type of probing martial technique, and was extremely sensitive to energy undulations. For outstanding generals and powerful martial artists, the ability to seize and control energy was a kind of instinct. Once the scouting ripple swept past them, it would immediately produce an extremely minute feedback, which could reflect the opponent's strength to a certain degree. If Sophie was truly created by Temple, then Temple's research on spirits is much deeper than what I can imagine. Someone was sizing us up just now, Sophie said coldly. Tang Tian's eyes constricted. He suddenly thought about Sima Zhao's Magatama. In other words, Magatama was created. Could it be that the Honorable Martial Continent has grasped such a technique? And, to be able to create such a powerful spirit general, that is truly terrifying. His smile became even more amiable. With Karl taking charge of this matter, I can be at ease. The imposing aura from the Honorable Martial Banner of Knights was even more terrifying, to the point that it actually caused people to feel suffocated. The gold armor on their bodies seemed to have enveloped their imposing aura, but it would occasionally reveal a trace of tyrannical destructive aura, causing people to tremble involuntarily. Were they created? Is it a misconception? When Tang Tian woke up, everyone immediately found their backbone, and all the confusion and hesitation disappeared overnight. Johnson heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. The change in the atmosphere made him feel that it was miraculous. All the people who looked like frosted eggplants for the past few days were now brimming with energy, their faces filled with ominous glints as they walked back and forth, as though they had excess energy and were looking for a fight. Tang Tian did not have any strength in his body, but he was still in high spirits. His clear eyes were like stars, extremely bright. In the distance, Tang Tian listened to Johnson introducing the sacred son Charles and the Honorable Martial Banner of Knights. His gaze would occasionally land on the Honorable Martial Banner of Knights donned in gold armor, and his heart trembled. All of the Honorable Martial Banner of Knights that were wrapped up tightly, all of them emitted a terrifying aura. The terrifying aura was somewhat familiar, causing him to think about the saints in Heaven's Road. The specialty of Heaven's Road's martial techniques was the refinement of energy, which the sacred Saint Galaxy did not possess. There were many martial techniques in Heaven's Road that were not suitable here, but the temple had many geniuses, and many of them had improved on these martial techniques, and the scouting ripple was one of them. Sacred son Charles comes from a prestigious family. His father is the youngest clan elder of Temple, and his mother is the daughter of the previous great clan elder. Ever since he was born, he received blessings, and his talent is unparalleled. He is hailed as the greatest discovery of Temple in the past 100 years, and his every word and action is closely watched. Sacred son Charles has displayed intelligence beyond his age since young, and at the age of 15, with the unanimous approval of the clan elder, he was appointed as the current generation's sacred son. Master Sophie's background is extremely mysterious. Some people say that she is the immortal spirit of the deceased Holy Maiden, and is protecting sacred son Charles. But this subordinate had unintentionally heard of a rumor, saying that Master Sophie was created. But this rumor is too shocking. Her hand did not leave the sword hilt, and was extremely cautious. Chapter 855. Seems like the opponent is trying to disguise himself, Mu Jixia thought. Mu Jixia's eyes lit up. That's right, a unified savage continent is also not beneficial to the Gold Continent. It was highly possible that the Gold Continent could see the danger of the savage continent's unification, and wanted to kill that woman. However, Tang Tian's achievements made him feel very surprised and shocked. In the faraway Shang continent, Xiao Er, who was immersed in his work, seemed to have heard someone reminding him, and raised his head in a daze. But he never thought that not only did he not find any traces of the enemy, he would even encounter a mechanical army in the savage continent. The more he thought about it, the more it made sense. However, the cautious Mu Jixia did not let down his guard. He carefully observed the other party. When he noticed the opponent's war flag, he was a little surprised. It was an eye-catching bronze cross. This thought flashed through Mu Jixia's mind, causing his expression to become even more serious. He knew what that meant to the honorable martial continent. As long as the savage continent got rid of that woman, they would be able to solve the root of the problem, and the southern region would not be a threat. Other than the honorable martial continent, there was another powerhouse that was equally strong and united, and that was the Gold Continent. But to a thick-skinned and black-hearted guy like Old Tang, such mockery was useless. He was ashamed for 2 seconds before he adjusted himself and said proudly, "He's still my son. The student has surpassed the master. It can be seen how wonderful my arrangements were back then. How far-sighted. Old commander, do you know what a man's strongest weapon is?" But the truth was right in front of him. When would he be able to end his life as a laborer? At this moment, little fool missed Tang Tian's return very much. However, why did it feel a little familiar? I seem to have heard of it somewhere? The warrior's heart that was filled with years of rust suddenly began to move slowly. The rust rustled and fell off. The sharpness was like snow, and the heat was like a soldering iron. He had been bitterly searching for the Perseus King Court. The legendary goddess of war was the key to unifying the savage continent. Mu Jixia had long made up his mind, regardless of the price he had to pay, even if he had to die in the savage continent, he would kill that woman. As long as they killed that woman, the newly united savage continent would immediately crumble and break apart. Mu Jixia was extremely familiar with the flag of the Gold Continent Elite Army, but he had never seen this flag before. What a strange name! Mu Jixia had never heard of such a strange name. The reason why he sealed Little Fool in the palace was to give him enough time to grow. On the other hand, Tang Tian, who only had a bright side, was naive and optimistic. He did not have too many thoughts, so it was not easy for him to arouse the vigilance of others. This was a kind of protection for him, allowing him to grow up safely. Inside the Gemini throne, a face that resembled Tang Tian but was slightly more handsome revealed a slightly mocking smile. His sideburns were grizzled, and his gorgeous black robe was meticulous, giving off a noble aura. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, Mu Jixia wouldn't have believed it. His weathered face was now solemn. Mu Jixia was puzzled. After entering the sacred Saint Galaxy for so many years, their leader was born in the Gold Continent and had a high position. Although he returned to the Gold Continent as a spirit general, he still had a huge reputation. The two of them created such an army. The gold state pattern could greatly increase the strength of the armor, greatly increase the affinity with energy, and greatly increase the user's control over energy. It could also greatly increase the performance of the mechanical puppet, but its craftsmanship was extremely complicated, and its cost was extremely high. Only the top-level mechanical puppets would be willing to use it. It was impossible for such a grade of mechanical puppets to appear in the market. If not for the Honorable Martial Continent's intelligence system being outstanding, Mu Jixia would not have recognized it. Mu Jixia also knew that mechanical puppets with gold state patterns were used by the highest level of guards in the Gold Continent. Why isn't Crazy Tang back yet? What terrible luck, your crow's mouth is working. Who knew that the development of the situation was out of his expectations? Little Fool finally broke through the seal, but he was still unable to take control of the body, and was ultimately suppressed by Tang Tian's light side. And he thought that Tang Tian did not have any schemes, and did not have enough intelligence, but had mysteriously achieved a hegemony. From the start to the end, Little Fool had always been in a supporting position, which made Old Tang unable to understand. Old Tang spoke calmly, but with a disdainful attitude. As a man, the strongest martial power is to sow a seed and change the world. Just like how he had two sons, one was a treacherous and cunning son who had received guidance from famous teachers, but could not compare to the other naive and simple-minded son who lived in a desolate area? The Gold Continent was the strongest continent in the Eastern region, with a long history, and was the true ruler of the Eastern region. Mu Jixia stared at the bronze forest that was filled with killing intent, his gaze congealed, his heart filled with shock. The commander thought for a moment. Invincible, undefeatable. He had never seen such a strange mechanical puppet, 2 heads, 4 arms, as though 2 bodies were glued together. The 2 bodies were black and white, with a clear distinction. One was white with black eyes, the other was black with white eyes. The dividing line between the 2 bodies was black and white, and the 4 words, Gemini Throne, could be clearly seen. Invade the savage continent? No, invading the savage continent is not as beneficial as invading the southern region. Listening to Old Tang's nagging, the commander's thoughts started to drift. All the memories that were weathered to the point of nothingness surfaced in his mind. All the faces that he once thought he had completely forgotten were as clear as ever. The commander was enraged. You want to fight? They had quietly set off after the Honorable Martial Continent launched the southern expedition. That shouldn't be the case. If the Gold Continent and the Honorable Martial Continent attacked the southern region at the same time, with a pincer attack, it would be easy to divide the southern region. And in the history of the savage continent, it had never been conquered before. Compared to the affluent southern region, the savage continent was barren and barren. Even if the Gold Continent wanted to attack the savage continent, they would definitely not just send 2,000 elites. What could they do? Gemini Throne? Calm down, the enemy is right in front of us. Don't tell me you want them to laugh at you? Old Tang said slowly. Hee, for Mu Jixia to actually appear in the savage continent, needless to say, he definitely has designs on my daughter-in-law. He truly does not know his place. Old Tang still did not understand how Tang Tian did it. He only felt that his son was extremely good at tormenting people, especially good at taking advantage, and once he tormented, he would take advantage. From the style of the mechanical puppet, it was definitely a mechanical puppet from the Gold Continent. Its slender body did not look fat at all, and it held dual blades on its back with the hilt facing downwards. The classic configuration of 6 pairs of wings on its back demonstrated its outstanding mobility. The green metal armor was engraved with complicated and profound patterns. It was a configuration that only top-grade mechanical puppets would have, and they had a special name: Gold Continent Patterns. Tang Tian's achievements were not only stronger than Little Fool's, even Old Tang himself felt ashamed. Wrong, Old Tang said without hesitation. If one looked closely, they would realize that the man was actually a spirit general. That's fine, go ahead and beat him. Old Tang's anger seemed to have disappeared, and he spoke slowly, full of reminiscence. Anyways, his skin is thick and can take a beating. Sigh, since he was young, I have never beaten him up. Oh, I mean since young, I have never let him feel the love of a father, what a pity. His rough face was filled with vicissitudes of life, as though time had etched its mark. Commander was right, Gemini Constellation's foundation, compared to Tang Tian's foundation, was like a small magician in the presence of a great magician. It was as though he had returned to the distant battlefield, back to the familiar sound of the wind, the familiar shouts. Even the air was filled with a familiar smell, the smell of gunpowder. That war flag was the same as in the past. But compared to Tang Tian, he was able to create the Southern Alliance in the southern region with his bare hand. If he was given a bit more time, the possibility of unifying the southern region was extremely high. But what made Mu Jixia even more worried was the Gold Continent's mechanical army appearing in the Savage Continent, and the strategic intention behind it. The commander's face immediately turned black. Come, let's fight, just treat it as a warm-up exercise. Unless the other party had the same thoughts as him? We can fight slowly, there's no rush, we've fought for so many years. Old Tang said slowly. But the opportunity to meet Mu Jixia, TSK, is something that can only be chanced upon. You dug out the Southern Cross Army's war flag from the rubbish heap from tens of thousands of years ago, and placed it on our army, and I reluctantly agreed. But young Mu should not recognize the flag, but that's right, the Southern Cross Army's war flag has disappeared for tens of thousands of years, who would remember? Since we have raised this war flag, we cannot lose face. How is it, old commander? Don't tell me you've forgotten your past abilities. Did the Gold Continent find a way to solve the problem of the Gold Continent marks? You don't have blood. Old Tang reminded him. The commander laughed, he raised his head. But there were over 2,000 of these mechanical puppets in front of him. The commander did not understand. Wrong? What's wrong? Aren't you afraid that something bad will happen to him? The commander had a look of disbelief, he scoffed. Oh, I forgot about Little Fool. In the past, you had high hopes for Little Fool. The dark side of human nature converged into one, crafty, sinister, cold. He also had countless of famous teachers to guide him. TSK, what was that again? I remember now. He can embody the demeanor of the Gemini Constellation's royal family. He can control the Gemini Constellation's foundation, and he is your trump card to turn the tables. In the end. Ha 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 ha. Crazy Tang doesn't care about your broken palace anymore. That was the only reason that could explain the appearance of a 2,000 elite army in the Savage Continent. Tang Tian was safe and sound, causing the biggest stone in his heart to drop. The reason why he asked his wife to bring Tang Tian to Star Wind City was to let them avoid the calamity, and not attract attention. Haha, we finally have a fight. In the cabin beside him, a tall and sturdy man laughed out loud, his expression excited. Run, 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 I've run so much that my mouth tastes like a bird, I can finally fight. And it's Mu Jixia, ha 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 ha, aye, your father's blood is boiling. He felt that his world view had been completely toppled. Amidst the laughter, Old Tang's face was as black as a pot. In truth, he had never thought that the one in control would actually be Tang Tian's bright side. After thinking about it, he decided to send someone to inquire. Just at that moment, His gaze swept past a mechanical puppet, and he was immediately startled. The commander added fuel to the fire. He even has ideas about your son. In the end, his tone was ice cold, filled with killing intent. Chapter 856. He could not help but look at the old commander. He believed that the things that he could see, the old commander would definitely be able to see as well. The old commander's ability to command and charge could easily suppress Old Tang. In terms of intelligence, the old commander could not compare to him. He had spent a lot of effort on the army, and his standard had soared. But the strange thing was, as long as they fought, he would always be defeated by the old commander. Prepare for battle. Come, my green Red Cross scythe. Mu Jixia's state of mind did not waver. His face that was covered with frost was indifferent. He stood at the front of the troops, as stable as a boulder. The area that he controlled was not always better, and the more energy he had, the better. He had understood this logic from a long time ago. Little Tang was shocked, but Old Tang was even more shocked. Mu Jixia's heart surfaced a sense of danger. The blade was unsheathed. An indescribable light sigh and respect rose in Old Tang's heart. He did not give orders like how he usually did, but took the initiative to give up the authority to command. He was very clear that his battle instincts could not be compared to the old commander. Behind him, all of the mechanical puppets were doing the same action, unsheathing their blades. Just at that moment, a low and powerful voice broke the silence. The low and deep voice came out from the commander's chest. He looked forward, his face solemn. Over and over again, to the empty heart, to the emptiness that had no response, to the long-gone disappearance, he shouted in vain, just like in the past. They were facing such a monster, and the pressure was unimaginable. The ground trembled. The ground beneath their feet was like a gigantic drum that was fiercely struck. How will the old commander perform against Mu Jixia? In his desolate heart that had been extinguished for 10,000 years, he shouted, roared, frantically called out. His shouts resonated. Inside Gemini Constellation King, the old commander was expressionless, but his body was trembling uncontrollably. The black and white Gemini Constellation King slowly lowered his waist, his 4 arms slowly unsheathing their blades at the same speed. And this is? Mu Jixia's eyes even caught a glimpse of the surrounding mountain peaks that were affected, with countless of rocks falling down. Many of the memories that had disappeared, in the depths of his soul that was trembling, suddenly surfaced. On the opposite side of the sea of light, every tiny ripple spread out, turning from tiny to huge. At first, it was like a mosquito buzzing. As the ripples expanded, it was like heavy thunder. The energy around Mu Jixia's army was being assimilated at an astonishing speed. But the focus of his gaze was firmly on the black and white Gemini Constellation King. He saw a pair of eyes, a pair of blazing eyes. Mu Jixia's heavy sword was edgeless, but he was not skilled. In terms of realm, Mu Jixia surpassed the other 4. Come on, brat, look at my green Red Cross scythe. He was completely unaware that his weathered face was incomparably serious. Interesting. Mu Jixia narrowed his eyes slightly. He could clearly feel the change in his opponent's aura. What surprised him even more was that the expansion of the area of energy he controlled was restrained. The energy at the border, which had just been controlled, was affected by the strange tremors and went out of control again. Mu Jixia was expressionless. Southern Cross Army? He seemed to have heard of it somewhere. He had a vague impression of it. I think it should be an unknown army. Mu Jixia did not take it to heart. There were countless armies in the sacred Saint Galaxy. How could he remember them so clearly? Mu Jixia was different from the other 4. He had always been stationed in the Wei Yiguan continent, and did not have any outstanding achievements. But from start to finish, Mu Jixia was the leader of the 5 honorable martial tigers. Many people in the outside world did not understand why. Even the citizens of the honorable martial continent did not understand. Everyone would say that even if he did not have any achievements, He had worked hard. He was humble and low profile, steady and reliable. No one truly believed that Mu Jixia was the strongest out of the 5 honorable martial tigers. If Tang Tian was there, he would definitely be shocked. Solomon's light sword whale song was fully activated, adding his support. He was able to achieve such a state, but Mu Jixia was able to achieve it with just a battle formation. A 100% synchronization rate that explained everything. No one had ever achieved that, never. Old Tang, who was chattering on and on, also quietened down. He could feel his comrades' extremely deep fighting intent. It's better to beat him up before talking. So fast. Old Tang's face changed. He thought that he had placed enough importance on Mu Jixia, but at that moment, he realized that he had still underestimated him. In a battle, underestimating the opponent was definitely a dangerous and terrible thing to do. Furthermore, it was not important. In his eyes, it did not matter what army the opponent was, he would be the victor. His eyes that were as indifferent as a god did not have any undulations. It was empty, no one replied. When Old Tang saw the 100% synchronization rate, all of his doubts were resolved. Mu Jixia's pupils constricted. Come, everyone, look at my green-red cross scythe. Mu Jixia's gaze did not waver. Old Tang was no longer a newbie in the Sacred Saint Galaxy. He had stayed in the Sacred Saint Galaxy for a long time, and had a deep understanding of the army system. To be able to create such a terrifying scene, there was only one reason: synchronization rate, a 100% synchronization rate. Commander, I'm sorry, I really can't learn it, woo-woo. The young man whimpered, his shoulders twitching. Gemini King had 4 arms, and its posture was slightly different, with the 2 extra arms. One blade was raised high, and the other blade was placed in front of him, with the blade tip pointing downwards. Mu Jixia did not care that the assimilation energy was restricted. Maybe the old commander does not want to let down the banner, or maybe it is the pride deep in the warrior's heart that has never given up, even if 10,000 years have passed, even if the land beneath his feet is not the same land, even if the sky above his head is not the same sky. Old Tang was very clear what the battle under the banner meant to the old commander. Mu Jixia's army in front of him was dense and organized. He praised in his heart, as expected of the top-grade famous general. What a familiar feeling! This was Mu Jixia. Under his simple and unadorned appearance was the pride that was hidden in the deepest part. Every step was earth-shattering. The 2 peaks on both sides continued to crumble. Large amounts of mountain rocks and soil, bringing along a cloud of dust, rumbled down. With just one step, his speed suddenly increased by a lot, and the figure that rushed out from the cloud of dust became somewhat blurry. The bright red color spread at an astonishing speed along the blade, to the bronze palms and arms. Bang! The sense of danger in Mu Jixia's heart became stronger and stronger. The standard long sword that was covered in scars was placed in front of him, and the expression on his face finally changed. Advance! Old Tang finally understood why Mu Jixia was the leader of the 5 honorable martial tigers. The 2,000 mechanical puppets were like 2,000 statues, with the exact same posture. Sha sha sha. Suddenly, Mu Jixia noticed that Gemini constellation Wang Jian's 2 blades did not turn red, but instead lit up with a green light aura. And the other mechanical puppets' bodies also lit up with a green light aura. The 4,000 blades, with the same speed, were slowly moving, the blades rubbing against the scabbard, converging into a sound, bringing along an indescribable tremor that rippled out in all directions. I told you guys long ago, my talent is very powerful. Commander, don't worry, I will definitely bring this technique to greater heights. Hey, what's with your expressions? Are you looking down on me? The young man's face was flushed red. Bang bang bang. Southern Cross Army. Every famous general here had gone through hundreds of battles. All of them had stepped on piles of corpses to become famous. Leading troops into battle, Old Tang was very clear that the old commander was stronger than him. The strange tremors disappeared, the rustling sound disappeared, and the battlefield became quiet. The two of them had been partners for many years, and were extremely familiar with each other. Along the way, Old Tang held the absolute initiative. In terms of schemes and strategies, the two of them were on completely different levels. Even if the opponent was a famous general, even if the opponent was the other four tigers, the opposing army, the strange-looking Gemini constellation king, was also at the front of the formation. This caused Mu Jixia to be even more impressed. Not all military generals had the courage and ability to stand at the front of the formation. It showed that the opponent's strength was not ordinary, and they were confident. But to Mu Jixia, it did not matter. When he had just arrived at the sacred Saint Galaxy, he was filled with disdain towards it. The martial techniques here were outdated and lacked variation. But, when he slowly familiarized himself with the sacred Saint Galaxy, he understood that the sacred Saint Galaxy walked on another path, where armies ruled. When he understood more and more, the disdain in his heart towards the sacred Saint Galaxy had long disappeared, and was replaced with even more reverence. The history of the sacred Saint Galaxy was much longer than Heaven's Road, its foundation was much more profound than Heaven's Road, and the army system had already developed to its peak. The most perfect state in theory, which was hailed as a synchronization rate that was impossible to achieve in reality, had appeared in front of him. Only with a 100% synchronization rate could it create the scene in front of him. He was slightly excited, but in the blink of an eye, he calmed himself down. He did not look down on Mu Jixia, but he did not dare. Squatting down, his body leaned forward, both of his hands opened up like wings, holding onto two long blades. Mu Jixia might not be the strongest military general in the sacred Saint Galaxy, but he definitely had the qualifications to be one of them. Countless of cracks, like spiderwebs, extended out in all directions, raising dust that covered the sky. Are they attacking? Just at that moment, Mu Jixia seemed to have noticed the commotion, and also changed into a battle formation. The aura of the opposing formation changed, everyone's aura became one. Extremely dense light energy flowed silently within the battle formation, without any hindrance. The energy became denser and denser, congealing into a substance. The soldiers' figures were like a white liquid that disappeared. It was a sea of white light, a sea of light that contained endless danger and destruction. Inside the white light, Mu Jixia stared coldly at the opposing army. He initially wanted to send people to ask, but he did not expect the opponent to actually get into a battle formation. Without hesitation, he also got into a battle formation. Mo Xian's flawless balance, Jia Ya's strongest defense, Chiu Su Hua's heavenly steed soaring through the skies, Go Qing Wendao's unparalleled incisiveness, all of them were radiating with boundless radiance. Out of them, Mu Jixia was simple and unremarkable. Brat. Every one. Huh? In Mu Jixia's vision, a red dot appeared. It was the blade tip that swept through the air at high speed, causing intense friction, causing the blade tip to be heated red. But in the next moment, the densely packed red dots appeared in his vision. 2,000 extremely heavy bronze mechanical feet fiercely stepped on the ground at the same time, without the slightest mistake, as though they were the same person. The jaw-dropping precision, speed and weight caused the simple step to be filled with unparalleled might. That's right, the war flag was the same as in the past. He roared with all his might, with a trace of trembling in it. Mu Jixia was surprised. The opponent's strength was not ordinary, but his emotions were actually wavering at such a time? Chapter 857. He did not think about who the other party was, nor did he think about the other party's goal in entering the savage continent. The standard sword in his hand had followed him for many years. It was riddled with scars, and all of the scars were formed when he trained, and not a single one was formed from fighting. However, its combat prowess was undeniable. In the next moment, the green and red cross appeared in front of Mu Jixia. The standard sword in front of him was like a boulder, not moving an inch. Clang! To be able to contend against his army, such fighting strength was definitely not to be underestimated. There was only one reason: the gold continent was intentionally hiding it. The border between the savage continent and the honorable martial continent was extremely long. Other than the strategic Wei Yiguan continent, the other places were extremely dangerous. The two green and red crosses were imprinted on each other. This became the best footnote for the confrontation. He did not know that opposite him, Mu Jixia, who had a normal expression, was extremely shocked. His previous move looked like it was done casually, but in truth, it was a famous move. Honorable martial growth sword. It was not an army killing technique, but in his hands, its might definitely surpassed any ordinary gold rank army killing technique. Mu Jixia became excited. He was a low-profile and steady person, and the honorable martial continent had given him an important mission, which was to defend the Wei Yiguan continent. He had always been cautious and conscientious, and was meticulous. Against the savage continent, he was able to easily set up his plans, and the higher-ups who knew of his plans praised him, as he did not even have the chance to display his extraordinary fighting strength. Inside Gemini constellation, the sinister-looking old commander's expression became extremely calm. His deep gaze landed on the army in front of him, his mouth revealing a faint smile, as though he was reminiscing. After an unknown period of time, the snow-white energy crystals grew in the direction of the sword tip. As though the sword was growing, the speed was so fast that the naked eye could not catch it. It was called reverse cross/. The old commander retracted his reminiscing thoughts. His gaze landed in the distance, his eyes filled with admiration. Brat, this is the green and red cross-scythe unique technique that you have never learned before. In the information sent over by the intelligence system, there was no information about this army, as though it had appeared out of thin air. The mechanical puppet's entire body blossomed with green and red light auras, and were attracted into the cross. They were not as large as before, and they did not have as many famous generals. Their influence on the war was negligible. Their previous assault was extremely ferocious and unstoppable, but when they suddenly flew backwards, they were as light as dragonflies, as though they were two completely different armies. The strong contradictory feelings mixed together made people feel awe. This area, which was filled with spatial cracks, was known as the Black Death Zone. Even wild beasts did not dare to enter. The ground here wasn't corroded by the spatial cracks, but it was already riddled with holes. There were even many cliffs that required flying. Fortunately, everyone was strong enough. However, when they saw the crisscrossing black lines below, everyone's hair stood on end. They had to open their eyes wide and carefully avoid those spatial cracks in the sky. The clear ringing of a sword being unsheathed clearly drilled into everyone's ears amidst the earth-shaking rumbling. Mu Jixia was able to easily block his front reverse cross/, as expected of one of the strongest generals in the world. After the old regiment commander finished reminiscing, he was completely excited. Until today, when he truly met an opponent that he could feel danger from. The fighting intent that he initially thought would never be provoked was like a fierce beast that had broken free from its shackles, opening its scarlet-red eyes. After all, the new army only had 2,000 men, and was not even a miniature version of the Southern Cross Army. When the entire mechanical army landed on the ground like a withered leaf, not even a speck of dust could be seen. The intense contradiction reached its peak. An unobtrusive group quietly moved forward. Their speed was extremely slow, and every step they took had to be extremely careful. Everywhere around them were spatial cracks that led to nothingness, all of them crisscrossing, and had existed for tens of thousands of years. All of these spatial cracks were more dangerous than the sharpest blade. As long as they touched them, they would not even feel pain, and their bodies would be sliced into pieces. It was the first time someone was able to leave a scar on his sword. A difficult opponent. It is a smuggling trail. When the energy crystals appeared, the energy in the entire formation immediately became extremely active. He stared at the mechanical army opposite him. The mysterious army in front of him was stronger than he had expected. The upper half of the mountain peaks on both sides slowly slid down, and finally crumbled, transforming into countless of rocks that fell down, leaving behind half of the mountain and neat cut. Mu Jixia held the standard long sword horizontally in front of him, the sword tip pointed straight ahead, his gaze exploding. He welcomed the green and red cross, thrusting his sword forward. The slowly undulating sea of energy seemed to have found a place to vent, and frantically surged towards the tip of his sword. The vast amount of energy was frantically compressed to the extreme. The green and red fragmented auras flew like fireflies, the snow-white fragmented auras were like snow, the two were clearly separated. A loud explosion sounded out, the green and red fragmented auras were blown away by a gale, flying towards the Southern Cross Army. The fragmented auras that were like snow also flew towards Mu Jixia's army in the same manner. That's right, they are stronger than I expected. Since when did the Gold Continent have such a strong army? I never thought that the Gold Continent would actually hide such a powerful trump card. Mu Jixia quickly calmed himself down. The Gold Continent's history was much longer than the Honorable Martial Continent, and it was not strange for them to have a trump card that was unexpected. Although he was extremely prideful in his heart, but he was definitely not conceited to the point of thinking that he was the number one under the heavens. The snow-white light aura that was reflected on his face dimmed down, the light dimmed down, and an energy crystal the size of a rice grain appeared at the tip of his sword. It was a vast amount of energy that had undergone a terrifying compression to form an energy crystal. Facing the green and red fragmented auras that were flying backwards, the Southern Cross Army was like a light insect and flew backwards. A spot of light formed at the tip of the sword at a speed visible to the naked eye. Xiang Bei was also extremely tired. The road that was not a road was the Black Water tribe's biggest secret. He did not need to look down to know that the sword in his hand had a small crack. In all of his experiences, no one had ever blocked the front and back cross kill, and it was the first time. Although this Southern Cross Army was completely different from the Southern Cross Army in the past. This brand new army, compared to the Southern Cross Army in the past, was so small that it could be ignored. Compared to the famous Southern Cross Army in the past, this brand new army was extremely shabby. Furthermore, the trembling of the ground, the whistling bronze current, did not cause Mu Jixia's expression to change. Even if he did not care much about it, facing everyone, he could still maintain a low profile and be humble, because he knew that he was stronger than them. The fighting intent in his body was like a fierce beast, with no natural enemies, no opponents. He gave himself a harmless disguise and peacefully slept. Even with Xiang Bei leading the way, even with everyone's 120% focus, the number of people that did not fight was still 37. Luckily, everyone was a tenacious person, and did not suffer too much of a setback, just that they were even more careful. He only had one thought, to fight to his heart's content. The choices of the two armies were completely different. Everyone's faces were filled with caution, even Xian, who was a carefree person, did not dare to slack off at such a time. The ground beneath their feet, rather than saying it was a path, it was more like a stone pillar. Facing the incoming snow-white auras, Mu Jixia's army was like a boulder, not moving an inch. The snow-white auras seemed to have collided with an iron wall, and with a bang, they transformed into two currents, whizzing past the two sides of the formation. No one knew that in an unknown place in the savage continent, a huge battle that could shake the world was currently going on. Time stopped at that moment. Mu Jixia truly lived up to his name. The most dangerous thing were the spatial cracks that were thinner than hair. If one was not careful, they would be easily overlooked. The snow-white rhombus-shaped energy crystals emitted a faint white light. It was as warm as the sun. It did not have any tyrannical aura, but an indescribable comfort. But with the full support of the Gold Continent, the newer and stronger mechanical weapons, the richer and more extensive army system, the elites of the elites, adding his 10 years of meticulous training, it allowed the Southern Cross Army to have its own uniqueness. Mu Jixia's army's performance was praiseworthy, but it was not unexpected. But the Southern Cross Army's performance was surprising and shocking. It was hard to imagine that the huge and clumsy mechanical puppets were actually able to perform such light movements. Furthermore, it was not just one, but two, but the entire army. The long period of tension caused everyone to look fatigued. Even Taiji, a strong martial artist, revealed a look of fatigue. They had been walking in this dangerous place for 2 whole months. In truth, the distance was not far, but every step they took required them to be extremely careful, and their speed was like a turtle crawling. But no one had any impatience on their faces, because they had personally witnessed their comrades being sliced into pieces by the spatial cracks. An unfamiliar excitement surged in his body. Until he saw the Gemini constellation King's 4 swords, moving in opposite trajectories, slashing out 2 identical crosses, did Mu Jixia's pupils constrict. Mu Jixia's expression was normal, but the aura around his body suddenly surged, as though a ferocious beast had surfaced. Its brightness continued to increase, and in the blink of the eye, it became as bright as the sun, releasing dazzling white light, illuminating the surroundings, including Mu Jixia's face. The snow-white crystal sword body was warm and joyful, the green and red cross was cold and chilling to the bone. He knew the few powerful armies in the Gold Continent like the back of his hand. The Gold Continent was far away from the Honorable Martial Continent and was not their primary target, but the Honorable Martial Continent knew the importance of preparation, and thus their infiltration into the Gold Continent was not considered strong, but they were able to hold on for a long time. The cold green and red cross was like a crispy biscuit shattering into pieces. Xiang Bei was at the front. He would remind everyone from time to time, allowing them to avoid the dangers that were hard to discover. A snow-white streak of light, as fast as lightning, accurately pierced the center of the green and red cross. At the same time, the snow-white crystal sword body also shattered. There was nothing more exciting than meeting a good opponent. Rumble rumble,